Okay, Mr. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Thank you. It's 5:30 p.m. And this is the March 1st, 2021 meeting of the Architectural Advisory Committee. David, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Member Thompson,
I'm here.
Member Walsh.
Here.
Member Payline,
Here.
Member McCoy is excused. Member Lockyer,
Present.
Member Dozy,
Present.
Vice Chair Rotman,
Here.
and Chair Jakeway is excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, the agenda was published on February 25th, and our meeting has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. And does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? I might add that that would include the consent calendar item. Anybody have a question about that or? Well, I don't necessarily want to remove it from the consent calendar, but I did want to ask staff a question. If they could clarify for me, and this is, I'll read the item number 1. It's the sign program, a proposed sign program by Riverside University Health System for a multi-tenant center located at 191 North Sunrise Way. And the question I have for staff is if they could clarify the location of the different monument signs.
Yes, the site has a primary monument sign along the Sunrise Way frontage. The two smaller signs, which are essentially accessory signs in the form of a monument sign, occur on Andreas Drive and Tockwitz Canyon Drive, and they're primarily to demarcate the driveway entrance into the parking lot.
And is are the accessory signs, are they also illuminated?
I had a clarification from the applicant sign maker, and in fact, the two that are on Tockwitz and Andreas are not illuminated.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion to accept the agenda? Unless there's other questions.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, may we vote? All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? No. Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that's within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time the item is presented. If you want to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Is there anyone in line that wishes to speak on an item not on this agenda? No, David?
No, Vice Chair, we haven't had any specific requests to speak at this time, but if, as you mentioned, if anyone else who is on the video call would like to speak at this point in time, you may do so now by turning on your microphone.
Okay. All right. Since it doesn't appear that we have any speakers, we'll move on to item number 2 under unfinished business.
Vice Chair, if we could just have a vote on the consent calendar before we move to that item.
Oh, I thought, okay, I apologize. I thought that was part of the agenda vote.
So the acceptance of the agenda was just that the items on the agenda as they're lined or as they're listed are appropriate. So we'll need a separate action for approving the consent calendar, including just the one item.
Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
And a second?
I second.
Thank you. We have a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Okay. Now we move on to unfinished business. The item is CBM 2 Hotels LP for a minor architectural application, proposing facade modernization and an addition of a 864 square foot fitness center at the Courtyard by Marriott Hotel located at 1300 East Tockwitz Canyon Way. Staff report, sorry, my agenda,
Great. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. As noted in your staff report, this was considered by the AAC at your meeting on July 20th, 2020. At that time, just a minute. At that time, the project was reviewed with recommended resubmittal with the items that are noted on your page 1, modifying the roof of the exercise building to better integrate the roofs with the existing hotel, integrate some shading on the glazing, revising the front facade treatment to better integrate with the existing architecture, consider either using more of the stack stone elsewhere in the project or eliminating it. Looking at the darker paint colors relative to the overall paint scheme, looking at increasing of the plant sizes, and looking at how the desert scape areas are more better integrated with the existing turf, and then to provide information on the ceiling lighting in the canopy of the porte cochere. I'm going to share my screen and go briefly through my slide presentation on this. If we can do this. Are you seeing my slide presentation?
Not yet.
there we go.
Yep.
Yes.
You got it? Okay, very
Yep.
good. So this is the current the image of the front of the building as it exists today. These are the items that I just went over with you in terms of the recommendations from the committee at your July meeting. This shows the original submittal and the revised submittal. There's two things that I'm showing you here. On the left, this area, I'm sorry, on the right, this area here, the lower images here show the original configuration of the roof of the fitness center. And here you see the revisions which have been bubbled in red. These slopes now are reflective of the same slopes that are on the existing hotel building. As a result of this reducing of the slope of the roof, the parapet has had to be emerged slightly above the top of the clay tile roof in order to conceal the mechanical equipment there. This I will talk about in just a moment. The other thing that was recommended was shading over these large areas of glazing. And in this particular image that you see here in the middle of the screen, there's a site section or a building section that shows the proposed shading elements, which are proposed out of wood with vertical fins angled as you see them here. Our discussion with the applicant is that if this was their approach to shading, they may want to consider adjusting those angled boards in the other direction so that it actually does achieve some degree of shading. We're also recommending that they perhaps should be a little bit longer if they are going to truly provide shading, particularly on the south facade. Excuse me. This is the original that you see here below, what you saw back in July. And then this is the scheme as they've proposed the revision of it, in which they've lowered this false facade, bringing it down almost to the current eave level here and keeping it more in alignment with the height of the roof structure of the porte cochere. And as you'll notice here, the ledge stone has been eliminated completely. These lower planter walls would then be stucco and would be better integrated with the existing planters and structures that are at the front of the building. You'll also note here that the color proposed on the canopy structure is now reflecting the dark color of the facade treatment rather than the light color. On the landscape revisions, one of the things that the AAC made note of was that this is a rather abrupt edge that's been created here with the integration of this drought-tolerant landscaping at a couple of different areas on the site. And what you are looking at here, by the way, are just portions of the site for illustration purposes. So these aerial photos show the turf that they have now, and then these are the same areas with the proposed desert scape. And the items in the comments from AAC was that rather than simply having this hard line or border board along here, that this be better blended in a sort of more naturalized way. So that has not been integrated and the plant scheme has not been changed. And so we're still recommending that those items be adjusted accordingly. The lighting at the porte cochere is LED downlight in basically a square type of recessed fixture. On this drawing here in the middle of the screen you're looking at, you can see the lighting fixtures here in 2 rows. And then here you can see the photometric site plan showing the illumination levels produced by those lights. These are high relative to what our typical outdoor lighting standards are based on our outdoor lighting ordinance. Now, I will say that often we see at gas stations and other places in commercial buildings where you have a public entrance where there will be lighting levels that are slightly higher than one might see in the rest of the parking lot. However, these foot candle levels that you're seeing here are quite high. And so I think one of the things that we are recommending is that they look at the output of those lights and perhaps go with something that's a little bit less bright in terms of the lumen output on those fixtures. So the recommendation is for staff to, by recommendation for staff is to revise the mechanical well to make sure that it does fully conceal the roof mounted equipment. Subsequent to this particular presentation and my staff report, I did receive material from them in which it does show that the proposed mechanical equipment that's mounted on the roof of the fitness center will stick up above that parapet wall. They have done some sightline studies that would suggest that if you are in the swimming pool area, the mechanical equipment will probably not be shown. However, we do note that their screening of that roof mounted equipment does not currently meet the intent of our zoning code. And we would recommend that either they adjust the well itself, the mechanical well itself, so that they revise the truss design to get the floor of that mechanical well a little bit lower, or raise the height of the surrounding parapets to better conceal it. Certainly it's going to be viewed by the upper windows of the hotel. That's impossible to resolve, but at least it would be better, we think, from a greater distance away from the building to try to make sure those units are fully concealed. Also on the solar control, I believe that the building, because it's flanked by 2 3-story buildings on the east and on the west, most likely their morning and afternoon sun condition is going to be fairly shaded on that fitness building. The south elevation might see a little bit more solar exposure. So I'll leave that to the AAC to advise whether you want to see more aggressive solar shading on that facade or whether they should just drop it. And then, of course, I mentioned the revision of the photometric site plan with lighting levels that are a little bit less bright that would more closely conform to our ordinance. And then if the AAC does have further concerns with this particular application, I would recommend that we form a subcommittee to review the final recommendations so that we don't further delay this particular application. So that concludes my staff report. We are recommending approval with conditions. Let me just look at the names here. I believe we have somebody, Tom Young is from the applicant on this one, and I can probably answer any other questions that you may have that I can't answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Does the committee have any questions for staff?
No questions.
Member Dozy?
Have they indicated that they're willing to make the changes or come back with a revised landscape theme?
I haven't had any correspondence directly with them regarding that aspect. Tom Young, who is here with us today, may be able to answer that question for you, Member Dozy.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to defer to Michael Harper, who is part of our architectural team. And I know Michael is with us on the call today.
Thank you, Mr. Young. We'll get to you in a little bit. Okay, any other questions for staff? No, just go through my list of questions. Yeah, so I think we can move on. So if the applicant is present, which he obviously is, You can give us your name and address, tell us about your project. You have 10 minutes to present and 2 minutes of rebuttal if desired after any public comment.
Yes, could at this time I defer to Michael Harper, who is our lead design architect?
Yes, you may.
Good afternoon. Yeah, this is Michael Harper. You need my address?
No, it's okay.
No. I think Ken did a good job. This is a resubmittal from about 6 months ago. It slowed down a little bit due to the pandemic and everything going on with the economy, but he did a good job presenting the changes we kind of did with the front to kind of reduce the false front, as it was called in the last meeting, and integrate it a little bit more with the existing architecture, remove the stacked stone. As far as the fitness center, there's some discussion on matching the slopes with the existing slopes, which we did, and it created that parapet wall. There's been a lot of discussions about what that parapet wall should look like. Should it be there? There's multiple opinions across the board there. Love to hear y'all's opinion, maybe a little bit on that. So we have done that. It does shield it. We'll have to do one final study to make sure that the mechanical unit is completely shielded with the parapet wall, which it should be. We can reduce some structural trusses there a little bit. We are open to changing the planning on the landscaping plan. That's not a problem. We didn't engage the landscape to complete that. And then the portico share lighting, I'm going to have to rerun the calculations on that. We typically see that 30 foot candles in the center of these. It's a very high traffic area. It's the drop off. It's the pickup. But I was just reading the final zoning, your zoning earlier, and I think they're only recommending 1 or 2 foot candles, which is way too low for this area. But we can definitely work that out between staff and all that, and make sure that we get the right number that everybody's comfortable with. That's all I really have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any members of the public that wish to provide comment? If so, please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes. And David, I don't know if we have anybody in line or not.
No requests to speak, Mr. Chair. So if there is anyone else on the video right now that would like to speak, you may unmute your microphone.
Bless you.
Thanks.
Okay, I guess that will conclude public comment on the item. And we will move on to questions from the committee to the applicant. So do we have any questions for the applicant? And I am not seeing everybody, so let me change my view.
I have one question. Is there any concern about using wood as the shading structure or the trellis structure in terms of maintenance and longevity?
There's really no concerns at this point. There needs to be a little bit more detailing to make sure we're holding it up. The concern was and I think in the presentation, we are showing it on all 3 sides, the east, west, and south side. And then through our conversations with Ken, as he spoke about, we didn't think the east and west sides would necessarily need it because you have 2 3-story buildings, 15 feet away on each side. On the south side, if there was a concern, which there isn't, we could go to an aluminum system. We're just trying to keep costs down a little bit on that side. So we thought the wood would look a little better and kind of match the wood elements that we're building kind of in the front and on the sides entrances too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Member
if
Walsh.
I may ask of the applicant, it seems as though part of the struggle here is the initial decision to locate the air handler, the HVAC topside on the roof. From that, a list of kind of further problems ensues, everything from the aesthetics of looking down from above and the required balancing of the height of the roof and the trusses and all. Was there ever a viable opportunity explored to locate it at ground level as opposed to the roof?
We never did that study, just for the fact that it's easier to get the ductwork and everything into the ceiling from the roof.
Of course.
Once you put it on the ground, you've got to kind of duct it through a chase and up. Then we felt like we would run into the same problem. Now I have it on the ground right in front of my parking that I have to shield anymore with fencing and more hedge lines. So the study was never really done. It did. That is the kind of the point that's been causing the concern.
Yeah, I understand. And it just seems as though much of the conflict and the struggle here results from that. And I think it's intrinsic when you have this small, like terribly visible building symmetrically located in the center of the courtyard and all. It's small, and the roof configuration and size isn't very forgiving. If you have some big building, it's easy to kind of, without a lot of thought, bury the AC up there. So to me, it's instantly setting things in a very difficult direction for you.
I agree. I think one of the things that was talked about and Ken talked about was looking at the truss system to maybe see if we can get that mechanical well a little deeper, which would raise, to me, just my initial thoughts, would raise the roof height a little bit more. I was worried that the building would get too vertical looking as we try to get that mechanical well deep enough to hide it within the roof and not have that parapet wall.
Right. Understood. Thank you.
This is Tom Young. I believe ownership would be much more in favor of sacrificing a bit of a differential between the pitches of the two roof, rather than to provide this parapet on the top, which aesthetically we just don't believe is the best answer here. I mean, I think we have talked about doing the mechanical at the ground level, and there are issues surrounding that. But the fact is that I think aesthetically, it is a much better look to sacrifice a little bit of differential on the slope and being able to hide the mechanical, versus being I don't know, purists in terms of matching them exactly.
If I may suggest something, Mr. Vice Chair, in looking at the slide that you see that I have here on my screen, you'll note that the way that the truss configuration is, there's a fairly deep section here to this portion of the truss that is the floor of the mechanical well. There's also a plenum space here above this ceiling. And I know they need room for ductwork, and I know they need room for insulation, but this area here that's between the ceiling and the bottom chord of the truss might be an opportunity for running the insulation and ductwork a little bit more, and really pushing this floor of the mechanical well down based on a little bit of a revision in the truss design so that they get a deeper well.
Thank you.
I think what ownership is looking for is kind of get rid of that parapet wall. If we could sink the mechanical well a little bit and maybe do a degree or two more slope to get rid of that parapet wall and just have the roof they'd be much more happy with the aesthetic of it.
Can you tell me what the current proposed roof slope is versus what you came in with originally?
I do not know that off the top of my head. Originally, we came in with, I think that was a 812 roof. We're more at like a 512 now.
I mean, candidly, this is a 900 square foot fitness center inside, the courtyard of of a building that almost fully encloses it. The aesthetics of this building in the courtyard of the hotel itself, I would think are a little bit more important than what we're talking about here. I just feel like the roof slope shouldn't drive what the decision is here.
Say that again?
I think the architecture of the building is so much better when we don't have the parapet, the parapet on top, that if we do have to sacrifice a little bit of differential in the roof slope, I think it's a small sacrifice for the overall look.
And Mr. Vice Chair, this is something that if you'd like, we can work with the applicant at a staff level to resolve these kinds of minor details.
Yeah, well, let's, thank you for that, Ken. Let's finish with the committee questions to the applicant, and then and as part of our discussion, we'll certainly consider that. Thank you. Anybody else have some questions for the applicant?
Mm-hmm.
Member Lochner?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay. How about Member Thompson?
No questions. Thank you.
Member Poline?
Nope. Good.
Okay, that leaves me. So I'm going to go back toward the front elevation and talk about the portico share and the proposed improvements. And I'm going to start with the front entry doors and the new storefront you're putting in to the right of it. So as I look at the elevation, those new storefronts are they 9 foot tall? And
Correct.
and what size is are the doors, the entry doors? What's the height on those?
The existing entry doors are 8 foot.
And so those existing doors are remaining, is that right?
Correct. The sliding entry doors are remaining, correct.
And then on each side of the entry doors, on the return walls, it looks like there's also some storefront that I thought I read was going to be reused. Is that correct?
On the right side, looking at the picture right now, on the right side, that will be new storefront. On the left side, the existing storefront will be reused, correct.
Sorry, Robert, are you on sheet A201?
Just a minute. Possibly. These are from notes that I had. Here we go. I was actually looking at the enlarged detail sheet. I think it was A323. And then also 324.
Got it.
But to answer your question, the storefront height will match the existing storefront that will be remaining. It won't match the sliding door because the sliding door doesn't have a transom over it.
Okay, well, so from the rendering, it looks like you have the way the storefront is divided looks like it's different from the windows on the side of the entry doors versus the three new storefront doors, the three new storefront windows you're putting elsewhere. It looks like you've got, on the three new ones, you've got a mullion running, I'm going to guess it's up at 8 foot or something.
Correct.
And then on the one on the side, it looks like the mullion is down at 3 foot. And that's on perspective 3E on A323.
Yeah, I'd have to look back on that and look at the existing photos to see if it's just not a modeling error on our end.
Well, the reason I ask is it's called out is that that is being reused. And I just wanted to make sure that there's some consistency that happens across the between all the storefront windows.
Mm-hmm.
And that the height of the entry door at least lines up with something related to the storefront systems.
Yeah.
Okay. And remind me, the proposed colors, this is part of a corporate rebranding. And
Correct.
the colors, the dark gray color, the cedar color boards, and then the gray stucco, the lighter gray stucco, those are all part of a rebranding. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So now I'm going to jump to the fitness center. Have you done a solar shade study on that fitness center in terms of what you're proposing for the shade structures?
We have not.
You have not. So as Mr. Lyons mentioned in his staff report, probably on the east and west sides, it may not be as much an issue because you have 3-story buildings. The south side, I think you were calling out for it to be 3 feet. Here may not be adequate, but I think you can probably work with staff, or we can, you should do a solar study and work with staff to get that resolved. When I look at the elevations of where the solars for the shade structures occur, proportionally it looks out of place. The proportion of the amount of wall above them looks really tall compared to where for the building. So the building, and maybe this is a combined thing with the mechanical well, but I think that it would look better proportionately if that shade element was raised up slightly.
Okay.
Because then it would reduce the mass. And I'm looking at sheet A402, which has the elevations. And the proportion looks very top heavy to me.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Um, 3A, I'm sorry, and we come back, I guess, to the big issue, which is the proposed new portico share, that really what's being proposed is pretty inconsistent, in my opinion, with the architecture of the building. And these were comments that we talked about when you came before us in July. And I know that you've made some effort to get it a little bit more consistent by reducing the height of that parapet and getting rid of the stack stone. But it still comes down to a basic design issue that what's being proposed is so contrary to the rest of the building's architecture. And I don't really know how you can resolve that. It seems like a lot of money is being spent on this new portico, and I just don't think it ties in with the building. So anyway, anybody else have some questions for the applicant? No, then that will, then we will go on to the committee discussion. And so, anyone like to start? How about Member Walsh?
Sure. Chair Rotman, I think you covered a lot in that net you just cast out there. And I think that there are some underlying foundational problems in the design approach that are not resolved. And I realize that pieces of this, like the fitness center, are sort of tucked back away within the site and all, and maybe less important. But it's one of those times when I don't think that the goals of what they're trying to do are working out through this design direction. There is a conflict of the underlying styles of architecture that is not smoothed over. And it's as though they are designed either at wildly different points in time or by different people. And it doesn't come together as a harmonious elevational expression, number one. Secondly, I kind of go back to there, you cross the Rubicon when that HVAC had to go up on the roof. And yes, I think that the fitness center is strikingly disproportional. When you look at the elevation, instantly you can see it. The vertical distance between the window head and the roof eave is too tall. And, changing the roof slope does help a bit, but honestly, this is not really pulled together. I feel badly. This is the second time here. And I wish I had, I really wish I had something more kind of positive to share about this, but it doesn't hit the target that I think the corporation wants to. And certainly from an aesthetic standpoint, my humble opinion, it's not done well.
Thank you. Member Lockyer.
So in addition to some of the comments you guys made, I think as I read some of the staff comments and recommendations, particularly with regard to the landscape, it's tough to comment on some of, or elaborate on some of the landscape, because you can't really see the landscape plans unless I'm missing something here. Is there somewhere I can go to see the landscape plans, Ken? I maybe should have asked.
Bear with me just a minute, Member Lockyer.
Or a more detailed site plan?
That's what I'm going to see. I'm looking in the current submittal. Bear with me just a moment.
Yep. I've scoured through.
Now, I don't believe I got a revised plan from them. So if you give me just a moment,
Yep.
I'm going to
Take
go
your
back to
time.
the original submittal.
While you're doing that,
Yep.
while I look at the fitness center on sheet A112, if I can take you all there, fellow members. It's a roof plan, but it's the kind of close to a site plan. And we've all been to, better yet, there's a better sheet, A11, it's the first floor plan, A111. And there's no equipment layout on this plan for the fitness center. So if you can just ponder that area for a minute. And then if you can flip back to sheet A401. Takes me a minute to get there. Be patient. I promise this is going somewhere. Somewhere very depressing. If I can find sheet A401. Yeah, sheet A401. Towards the end of the sort of working drawing set there. Over at the left-hand side, there's some perspectives of the fitness center there. And, you know, there was some articulation added and some comment from staff about how potentially that 3-foot overhang was not going to do too much to benefit the shading of the glazing around that perimeter. And, you know, when I look at the hardscape plan and the landscape plan, which I don't really see, Ken, were you able to find that landscape?
Yep, as soon as you're ready, I'll pull it up.
You can pull it up because I've got this whole set on another monitor over here.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is that as I look at this sheet A401, there's a lot of hard on hard kind of architecture here. And so these hard horizontals up against these hard vertical planes. And as I visually experience or take myself through this fitness center and in and around this site, I find this kind of depressing experience with this hardscape up against this hard stucco. Even as I'm in this fitness center looking out, as I'm approaching this fitness center, walking through the hardscape, coming through these gates, approaching these gates, it's not an enjoyable experience. There's not much opportunity for landscape. If there is a plant to be added in a pot, I see staining on concrete coming through a potted plant, you know, soil wicking through that pot onto concrete, staining concrete, more of an afterthought rather than a planted bed up against the stucco wall or even a planted bed outside of a fitness center window. Just a lack of an opportunity for landscape or landscape lighting in and around this fitness center. This fitness center doesn't feel like a gem of a fitness center in here. The experience of the fitness center feels depressing, not like an enjoyable experience. The whole 360-degree circumference of it, even this 3-foot overhang, I almost want to see it wrap the entire circumference of it if it's going to be added, including this. Or maybe there's an eyebrow to be added on this clear story window in the rear facade. Even understandably, maybe this is the north and doesn't need it, but maybe there's some articulation to be added because there's this plant or something or some interest, or there's this approach to it from this particular angle. That was my observation there. Go ahead, Ken. Sorry, you're pulling up the landscape plan.
Yep, the landscape plan comes in two halves. So this is the rear half that you see on my screen.
Hmm.
And then here is the front half. Is there a certain part of the landscape scheme you wanted to focus upon?
Well, just noting your comments here from your staff notes from the beginning of the presentation.
Yes.
And so this is, I was expecting to see quite a bit more than this. Looks like there's maybe 3 plant materials to see from this, because what you were saying was we need to see some upsizing in materials. I'm not even seeing any materials on this, and then I see no lighting, no ground cover, or maybe there is some ground cover here.
Well, in this particular exhibit, this material that you see in this particular crosshatch is the turf,
Okay.
as you see back here as well, and here as well, and here, and
Mhm.
here. So this is all the existing turf. And then the area that's proposed for new landscape material happens within this area here, this area here, this area by the frontage, and then some work around here and here. In terms of the plant material, then again, there's a little bit of work happening here by the back end of the fitness center. Let me just get down if I can to, here is their, oops, I'm sorry. Here is their
I see.
plant material schedule, if you will.
I got you.
So we're looking at, kind of a typical range of plants that we see on many of our commercial projects around here with red yucca and blue yucca and Texas Ranger and so on.
Gotcha. Okay, and now I'm starting to see sizes. Yeah. Hmm.
And the comment about sizes was coming from the AAC's comments from July.
Okay. Yep. Something back to the lighting that you were talking about in the porte-cochere also. I noticed that no one touched on the temperature, the Kelvin temperature of that. And I noticed it's called out as 4,000. And I'm wondering if.
I have spoken, Mr. Lockyer, I have spoken with the applicant on that, and they are willing to move that toward a more warmer temperature around a 3,000 degree Kelvin.
Okay. Super. Mm-hmm. So those were my observations, that along with your comments also about softening those transitions, that maybe they can look at some of the landscape and hardscape throughout. Now, I happen to notice that here on both of those perspectives on that sheet, I called out A401. You can see it on that bottom perspective and that top perspective, that there's just quite a, I'm not sure what that round circular pit is in front of that fitness center there, but
I think that might be the hot tub or the jacuzzi.
oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a way to soften that or revise some of that hardscape and create a more enjoyable experience with the landscape and hardscape. Potentially. I'm not sure if that's going on elsewhere in the in what they're proposing in this fitness area or that front entry area. In other words, the areas of focus that they're presenting here also.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Oh, that's okay, Ken. I guess that's the summary of my comments. So in addition to what our fellows here have spoken about tonight, where the architecture seems out of line, the proposed areas of focus of their renovation here seem out of line with the existing architecture. These other things seemed just kind of cold and depressing. Mm-hmm. Unthoughtful when it came to landscape and hardscape also. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Member Pauline.
I think everyone's captured my thoughts as well, so I don't really have anything further to add.
Member Dosey.
So it appears where the fitness center's going, they're removing what might be an existing outside structure or palapa, and then just increasing the, when you look at an aerial site plan, there's a structure out there right now, and then there's the spa. And it just seems like when I look at the aerial and then I look at the site plan, either the fitness center is much larger structure than what's there right now, because to address Member Locklear's comments, I was wondering if it's possible that the fitness center be moved, closer to the parking lot to create more space, within the pool area, get some of those landscape features he talked about, soften the hardscape. And so I'm trying to make sure that the plans themselves are right on accurate. Because I did not find a sheet that shows the existing structure that's proposed, that's in that area that's proposed to be removed.
I don't think I had an image of that, Member Dosey. I was going to see if I can bring up an aerial here on my other screen for you.
Yeah. We kind of see it outlined here on this landscape. Well, no, that's the new. It just seems something's a little bit off.
Are you able to see this aerial photo on my screen?
Let's see, not yet.
No, Ken, it's still showing your landscape.
Right. Okay. Bear with me a moment. Here's an aerial photo just from Google Maps, of course, but Member Dosey, this is some of the area you were talking about. And this is the circle that Member Lockyer was talking about. That's the hot tub. And correct me, Tom, if I'm not mistaken, but the footprint of the new fitness center kind of goes in this general area. You can see this bit of an arc here. And that arc is an existing low planter wall that I believe is intended to be remaining, that you can see in the perspective drawings in your packet.
Right. So my thought was, when you look at the plan view that's been submitted on sheet A110, the fitness building is very close to the spa. And in fact, within the county health department code, there has to be a certain clearance between the spa and any building for maneuvering around in all directions. So I know it needs to be at least 5 feet, but I didn't know if the opportunity exists to move that building even closer to the parking. It's kind of just leftover landscape place in the back, and it might be more beneficial to have that towards the front of the building and preserve some of the feel of the courtyard. So it's kind of a site planning issue.
Mr. Young, could you address the committee's questions on that? If shifting of the fitness center building slightly to the north would be a possibility?
I believe it's a possibility to study it from a civil engineering standpoint. I think my frustration is that candidly, we talked about objections 6 months ago to many of the things we're talking about, but not to the level of objection that we're hearing tonight. And we could certainly have taken this in somewhat different directions had we gotten this type of feedback. water under the bridge, but I guess I just have to express my frustration at this point. We can take all of this into consideration and see what can be done. But I'm just a little bit overwhelmed with the negativism I'm hearing tonight. Candidly.
Member Dorsey, do you have anything more you'd like to add?
Yeah, I guess to readdress, I don't feel that it's negativism, but more as an opportunity to improve what we're seeing. And really with the site plan I'm looking at, I don't think the location of this building, where they have it, has enough distance from this. Again, Riverside County Health Department has a certain codes between bodies of water and then the amount of deck that has to go around the spa before you get to the face of that building. And just from a graphic standpoint, I don't think this would pass through the county or through the health department. And
But we currently show 6 feet.
do you? Okay.
All right. Anything else, Member Dozy?
Well, and not going back into the history, but I remember when this project first came through the AAC many years ago, and there was a number of reiterations of the design of the building and the roof pitch. And so what we see built had gone through a number of processes. So I think to be able to respect that is important to make, to have the complete cohesiveness of the project. And I remember at that time too, it was about corporate branding and trying to rebrand the image of it. And, when you look at the proposed porte-cochere, I can just see where that somebody came up with a corporate branding idea, and now it's just, they're going to try to make it apply to, a number of different projects. So it becomes more of a corporate identity, and I don't think it's really necessary. Thank you.
Member Thompson?
I don't know that I have much to add other than it seems like the modern elements that they're trying to put onto the front, to the porte-cochere and the squaring off of the building in the front doesn't have any consistency with the remaining architecture that's there, but I pretty much consent to what everyone else has said tonight.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the only, I think I've stated a lot previously. I think in terms of addressing staff's recommendations and which I will find here, and the items we brought up last time, I think probably the best way forward is to create a subcommittee for this project. There still seems to be a number of issues that need to be addressed. I think the whole approach of the remodel and the rebranding of the building, I think, really needs to be looked at, and how it relates to the existing architecture. I don't think it's resolved. I think, in my own personal opinion, I think they're spending a lot of money and it's not going to be architecturally beneficial to the building or their business. And I think their money could be spent better elsewhere. In terms of the minor details, I think changing the temperature of the lighting under the canopy needs to be looked at. I'd also like to add that there should be some consistency in the temperature of the lighting with other outdoor lighting, whether it's landscape lighting or lighting on the building, so that whatever we see from under the canopy matches what's around the building. The shade structure on the fitness center, yes, the angle of the slats need to be changed. I think they probably should do a shade study to determine how far that canopy should extend to properly shade that south elevation, and potentially even the east and west elevations. And I also, again, related to the architecture and the proposed colors, they seem incongruous with this Spanish mission style architecture. The white with the gray with the dark gray just doesn't seem like it's going to work well on this particular building. So I don't know whether it's a question of softening the white color or changing the gray colors, but I think really the color scheme needs to be looked at more closely, and again, how it relates to this building. So that's all I have. And do we have a motion? Okay, I'll move that we have this reviewed by a subcommittee. Is that what is that? Is that a denial, David, or is that a continued?
I think what you would do is you would do approval with conditions that the subcommittee resolve the outstanding items that you would be looking to have improved.
I mean, so there's a couple of things that the committee can do. As Mr. Lyon said, you can refer the matter to a subcommittee for consideration. I mean, effectively, that's a denial as presented. If there's alternatives that the committee would like to see, or if you feel that the design really can't be changed in a manner that would be consistent with the existing architecture or compatible based on the findings, it would just be a denial. But if you think there are things that we can do to improve based on the recommendations that you've heard from staff, as well as the comments that you've gathered tonight from the committee, as I said, you can recommend that a subcommittee review the matter and study the specific changes that the committee would like to see.
Well, maybe somebody else on the committee can help direct us. I'm at a little bit of a quandary because I think there's some major architectural issues that a completely different approach needs to be taken. And I don't know if the applicant is willing to do that.
You could certainly ask the applicant if he's willing to make additional changes to the project based on the comments that you've given tonight. And then from there, you can make a decision on the application.
Okay. So Mr. Young or Mr. Harper, hearing the comments that the committee has made, and particularly not to get into the minutia of the fitness center or diminish that, but I think the bigger issue is that the proposed rebranding of this courtyard is in conflict with the existing architecture of the building. And are you in any way able to address that?
I think it's difficult to answer that question at this point. There are issues with the brand itself that ownership is going to have to address. I mean, this is somewhat of a corporate rebranding, and there has been some latitude in the past, but it has not been a complete diversion from the basic design intent. So at this point, I can't I can't say that ownership is going to be willing, or that the brand will be willing to take this in the directions that that it may need to go. So in all due respect, we're going to need to talk with the ownership group about it, and let them guide us in how we move forward.
And can I just ask, as part of the rebranding, is the portico share design, is that part of it?
Yes, it is.
It is.
It's an attempt to get away from the older, heavier, and I'm not a design professional, but my sense is it's an attempt to get away from the older, heavier, large dominance of the porte cochere and go with a lighter, more open concept. We've used this concept with the tile roof motif before, most notably in Boulder, Colorado, where we integrated this porte cochere concept into the Spanish tile roof, and we did some more elements around the building that worked very well. And again, I thought that's what we were doing here, but and we responded to that in the way that we thought that was required. But apparently that isn't the case. So again, we're talking about a pretty radical departure from what the brand is trying to accomplish. And there's just a larger discussion that needs to be had before we can come back and tell you what we're able to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, might it be appropriate as a possible action for the committee tonight to table this matter and maybe continue it to a date uncertain, giving the applicant time to circle back around with their ownership team to decide, as he said, how far they might be willing to adjust this design scheme. And then, in 2 weeks, we could come back to the next AAC meeting, or a week or whatever, and give you a report on the degree to which they're willing to make some greater design changes. And then we can get this back on track for the AAC to maybe make a final review of it. Would that be possible?
Thank you, Ken. I like that suggestion. So I'll put it to the committee. I move that we table this item till some date uncertain, until the applicant can come back to us and give us some response to the comments that we've made. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you very much.
Quick question for Ken. Why is it that we haven't looked at this project since June of last year?
The applicant had a considerable length of time that I think they were working on some other matters. It came back to us fairly recently, and so the timing was simply the time within which the applicant needed to assimilate the request from the AAC and build them into a new design.
Gotcha. Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
Okay. We're now moving on to new business. Item number 3, Community Development LLC, requesting a minor architectural application for the renovation of an existing 2,637 square foot vacant building, including new landscaping and parking lot upgrade and exterior sign review for a new dispensary at 315 North Indian Canyon Drive. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is an application for a renovation of an existing building located at, if I can get the next slide to go. Looking at 311 North Indian Canyon Drive. So this is a 2,637 square foot building that is vacant currently. That used to be, was built as the city's Greyhound bus station in 1959. So you'll see that the site has the Palm Springs Life Building to the south. Tribal land is across Indian Canyon at the east. And then in the north, there's a building that is used currently for a smoke shop. So the site plan that was submitted includes a clockwise circular motion for vehicle access that you'll come in on the south end of the building and circulate around and exit on the north. There are 9 parking spaces to the rear of the site and 1 handicap space that will be placed close to the building, providing access. This plan also includes the landscape plan, and you'll see one of our conditions of approval is that a more adequate landscape plan be submitted. So this plan shows use of shade trees and some shrubs along the north wall to help soften that wall. So as you can see, there's not much area for landscaping, but we have required them to put in shade trees for the parking lot shading. So as I mentioned, the building originally was the bus depot, the Greyhound station, and staff has found some historic photographs. This one was taken in 1968. And I'll point out that I'll circle some items here. So on the south elevation, there was the front door was here. And this went into Otto's coffee shop. And then on the front elevation, there are 3 windows along Indian Canyon. So in a more recent photo, this was in 2008, so 30 years later, this shows the south elevation of, at that time, Cowboy Way Barbecue Restaurant, the front door with this sort of glass louvered building, window above it, and then the front facade had the 3 windows. So virtually the building has not been altered, at least the exterior, from the original design. So in the proposal that they're looking to renovate, is to use a seamless glass street system that will be able to see into the property. The roof line, the vertical roof line will stay the same. One item that has been removed is the glass along the south building face. They've added a double slider door to have it gain access into the site. And then there was a door here that went into another unit space, and I'm not sure if that was original or not. So you'll see that traffic circulates in on the south side between the building and the Palm Springs Life Building, and then circulates back out next to the smoke shop. They provided some other renderings of what it will look like at night. I do want to point out that there are lights that are can lights that are up in the eaves of the building. In one of the original 1968 pictures, it shows that these lights are there. And then also they're adding mechanical equipment onto the roof, and we'll show some mechanical screening in just a minute. So currently, this is the state of the building. As you know, it's been vacant. It needs a lot of improvement, and we're glad that somebody's investing in putting renovating the building for this cannabis dispensary. Some other photographs of what it looks like now. This is the window on the south side that they're looking to remove, and then the door towards the back. And then this is looking towards the rear of the building. They will resurface and reslurry the parking lot, restripe it, and as we mentioned, we'll add some shade trees looking towards Indian Canyon, and then the back. This will be paved, and the parking goes back to the wall. The material board that's in your packet includes the glassless frames. The color is a gray for the stucco, and then the framing around the windows will be this dark colored black. And then the mechanical equipment screen will be also that same color on the roof. And I included some examples of the type of screening that they're proposing to use. In your packet, there's also a floor plan that shows this front door on the south side, and then the windows along Indian Canyon. And then there's a delivery door in the rear, and this door goes to the mechanical unit inside. Once again, this is the site plan. And then you have building elevation showing the details of the renovation, and then a photometric plan. So the photometric plan that was included in your packet has been revised. This is the correct version. You'll see that they've reduced the overall lumens and the foot candles to a significant level that will meet the zoning code. The type of fixtures proposed are the LED light fixtures for the poles, and then these little units that will go on the side of the building itself with a cutoff fixture that will focus the light down. One other thing that the AAC is here to review is signage. The cannabis ordinance requires this AAC to review signage. So they're proposing to paint this column, this yellow, and then the lettering is a metal lettering that will be backlit. So there'll be lights that will glow at night. That'll say the Hyperwolf, the name of the dispensary. And in this drawing, it shows a planter bed in the front. That's not there. That actually is just a rendering. The renderer took that and ran with it, and that shouldn't be there. So you have the details of the sign. The letters are 16 inches, and that meets the design criteria for the downtown. And then an example of the yellow that they're proposing. So staff recommends that the glass that is on the south elevation be put back, and that a final landscape plan be reviewed at staff level. And as I mentioned, they did come in with a revised photometric plan that meets the zoning code. So Chair, that concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions for staff?
I have one question.
Member Thompson.
Hey, Glenn, is staff recommending that window on the south side stay because of the historic nature of the Howard Lapham building?
Right, it would be consistent with the 1959 design. And we did ask the applicant to do that, and they'll give you a reason why they would not like to put it back in.
Okay, thank you.
Glenn, did they give you, in the lighting submittal, did they give you any information on specs on what the type of light is and the color temperature?
So it lists lumens as -1, which isn't really what we're looking for. However, they do meet the allowable max min, which is what the code looks at as far as lumens versus the max versus minimum as far as light intensity. So no, there's no Kelvin or any listing like that on these plans.
Okay.
And the applicant is on the Zoom call.
Okay, great. Any other questions for staff?
I have a question.
Member Joseph.
Glenn, is there a reason, it looks like they've defined a new parking lot. I'm looking at the site plan, and in a couple areas, they show some new curbing with some trees, but is there a reason they haven't, put a curb and planter, say, starting on the north side of the building, wrapping around, and then continuing, past the loading dock down to the south? Right now, it's just like the asphalt comes right up to the building, and it feels like it could be better defined by some type of curb work or definitive edge.
Right. So in this plan, they're putting in curb next to the handicap space because they need to have that nearest the building. And then you see these trees up here, they kind of are floating. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to see a better plan. Are they in a curb? I mean, it doesn't really show.
Right. And then even along the north side, that could be curbed. I mean, because the building area is defined separate from the drives. It could be defined separate from the driveways and parking, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I've lost visual of the committee.
Oh, okay, let me stop sharing. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
I have one final question. Glenn,
Yes.
is there a reason why they can't do that planter in the front, on the sidewalk in front of those 3 storefront windows?
So the property line goes right up to the front facade. So they would have to go through an easement process, and it's not always the way the engineering department wants to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll hear from the applicant. Please state your name and tell us about your project. 10 minutes to present, 2 minutes of rebuttal if desired after any public comment.
All right. Good evening, members of the commission. This is Gary Miller with Miller Architectural Corporation. Also on the line is Nick Woolham, the owner, and Mike Bedell, our project architect. If I may respond to the question about the temperature of the lights, I don't have that available to me right now, but we're happy to provide whatever temperature rating that the commission sees fit. If I may address the window situation, we had several reasons for shifting or reducing the amount of glass facing south and for placing the entrance further to the west on that south wall. One, the building having been built in the 50s, it does need some structural upgrades, and we wanted a portion of that wall for to function as a shear wall. 2, as we have a lot of east-facing glass, we were concerned about heat gain and wanted to reduce some of the south-facing glass, even though some of it's under an overhang. The overhang's quite high. 3rd, we were, from an aesthetic standpoint, we were trying to develop this very open feeling towards the street, and then to contrast or accent that by closing off a little more of the south-facing glazing. We understand that it is a mid-century modern building, and that's often how they did things. But we would like to give it a little more 21st century twist on mid-century modern. Then I'd like to turn some time to Mr. Woolham to talk about some operational concerns with respect to the glazing. Oh, I'm sorry, one other item. We also need wall area to display product, and with an entire facade facing east that is all glass, we were looking for some place for display. So now, Nick, if you'd be kind enough to speak up.
Yes, thank you, Gary. Thank you, staff and council. I appreciate your time. We reviewed this and we spoke to our security consultant, and they brought up a concern as well. There is a public sidewalk very close to our property line, and we're trying to kind of relocate the door, shift the door, if you will, back a little bit from the sidewalk to kind of secure the entrance. So from a security standpoint, that was very significant to us. And so it was kind of designed with that in mind. And like Gary just mentioned, we have a limited retail storefront. This building is very small. So to meet all the standards to have a modern functioning retail cannabis dispensary, we were very limited with space. And so we really tried to maximize the functionality of the retail front and adding that wall. And one of the things too as well is it's going to be a concrete texture. So we wanted to modernize it. And we believe that that face alone is actually very aesthetically appealing. Like Gary said, aesthetically, we did design that with intent. We do want to keep the overall aesthetics of the building, though. We agree, me personally, when we purchased the building, it was always important for us to preserve the aesthetics. The architect is very renowned in the area. We did a lot of research on him, and so it was important to us to preserve that. And so we're not really making any major modifications like Gary highlighted. Our general contractor was on site and there was some concerns for structural support. We are modernizing the building with some very extensive HVAC systems. And so when we went to design that again, that was brought up to add some more support to the building for a safety precaution.
Okay.
One other thing I'll touch on too, real quick, the landscaping. The driveways on both sides of the building are actually very small. And so we were concerned about putting a planter too far out and limiting the driveway, the enter and exit. If staff wants to show you an aerial view, I can explain further, but there are some space constraints again with the enter and exit, and we wanted to make sure if there's ever an emergency that large equipment can get in there like fire trucks and ambulances. So we wanted to keep those entryways pretty accessible. And that was the intent there. We are intending to plant like some type of greenery and ivy along the walls. The perimeter walls, 3 of the perimeter walls are basically property lines. And we want to basically put some type of ivy or something aesthetically to cover that. And we're happy to go in with staff and design something from a landscape standpoint that meets all the standards and criteria. We feel really privileged to be in the downtown area. We think it's an amazing area to be in, and so we're just very wanted to kind of design within what the elements already kind of look like. So again, we're trying not to change too much.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anybody from the public who wishes to make a comment on this item? Does not appear, so we'll move on. Do we have any questions for the applicant from the committee?
I'll start.
Member Dozy.
Towards the west side of the site plan, parking lot, there is about a 26-foot area. What happens in that space?
I'll pull.
This is that open space west of the parking lot to the property to the west.
I'm pulling up the site plan right now.
That is fenced off, or there's a block wall that exists there now. So we were planning to put a mix of wildflowers in there, but other than that, there's no intention to develop that area.
Okay, right. So there's a block wall at the furthest west point of the property, but right now it's just open space from the edge of the parking to the west.
Right. So the asphalt will be removed back again, so cars can park there. And then in the back of the building, if you'll see on the site plan from the aerial view, there's a loading zone. We are intaking, highly valuable type of content. So we have a secured area in the back. If you look, there's handicap and there's also a loading area. That's the space you're referring to further on all the way to that back west wall.
Yes.
That will be fully landscaped with like agave type style, modern desert landscaping, very minimalistic. Sand be the base, compact sand would probably be the base. And we would actually like to add some type of nature lighting for the evening as well. We like the tungsten warm type of lighting. We want to have the building very warm and welcoming. We do not want like very bright LED style white light emitting from the property. We want very warm tungsten style lighting, shadowing the outlines of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, I don't have the committee, so if you have a question, please start. There we go. Anybody else with some questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I had a quick one. On two of the evening renders, I see one on near the entrance. The first render doesn't have uplighting and the second render does. It has a little well below the wall by the front door. And I was just curious, which is more accurate?
So I would refer to the color board. That is most accurate. That shows you kind of the texture as well of the building, the concrete texture. The only thing that would not apply is that planner.
Glenn, can you go to that color board? That one.
Yeah. So this image I think reflects.
Oop.
There we go.
I saw it. Wow, you're pulling through.
There we go. Yes. So you can see that the texture of the building, the color of the building, again, everything would apply except for the planner in the front. That's public domain.
Okay, but the uplighting on the south wall is intended.
The uplighting on the south wall, yes, that is intended.
Right. Thank you.
And that would apply in the landscaping as well. So how we did that uplighting, we would try to do similar effects via landscaping under like agave style plants or palm trees to try to cast light up the tree.
Okay. Anybody else?
Got a question, Robert.
Member Doctor.
Yeah, and how is the roof overhang allowed to violate the property line? But are you positive about the property line location?
I've not checked personally, but I've been informed by staff that was public domain. And it appears I've had the water department out there. I've had the gas department out there too, and they've made a similar comment that the gas pipe is actually on public domain.
Right. So there are buildings in downtown that do have overhangs that overhang into public right of way. That's not common that we do it now, but there are buildings that are in the public right of way.
And have you checked the mathematics from the street center line and the half width of the street, and the 30 feet right of way all the way back down, calculated out to what is the right of way versus your property line, or done a survey, check the property depth? Just curious, because that planner sure would be nice for the enhancement along that street.
Yeah, Member Payline, Member Lockyer, the sheet, the site plan AS 101.
Yeah,
shows,
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it shows it's got 50 feet from center line to the face of the building. So unless, that's an accurate measurement, it looks like it's just the overhang that currently is extending over the property line. But, given the age of the building, it wouldn't be uncommon for, right-of-ways changed over time on our major thoroughfares. So we may have required more in more recent decades than previously.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a couple questions. Can you talk to me about your entry door? It looks like on the plans, there are a pair of doors with side lights on each side, and that they slide, but on the rendering, it shows something much.
Can you specify what rendering you're looking at?
Well, the rendering on the material board, the color board, as an example, looks like it's a standard sliding glass door. And maybe if they do slide, they slide into some sort of pocket. But on your plans, it looks very different. And the elevation is different.
I can respond to that, Nick.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Or
This is
Michael.
Mike Bedell, project architect.
Can you speak up, Michael, please?
Yes, the plan is to put an automatic sliding entrance door in that location. So what's shown on the floor plan would be correct.
And so, so it's a biparting sliding door, and they slide over side lights. Is that right?
No, they're not side lights. They're
No, that is correct. Just as you described it, just as the floor plan shows.
okay.
Yeah.
Two
I mean, that's how I'm
sidelights,
reading
and then the moving panels slide over the side lights. I think there might be a minor scale difference on the rendering as illustrated in the color board. But the idea is to have a single opening full of 8 feet, and then the sliding panels each are 3 feet.
Okay. And what is the height of those? What's the height of that door?
It's 7 feet. We'd love to go 8, but the building has very low ceilings, so we're going to stay with 7.
You're at 7, but the storefront along Indian Canyon is at 9 feet.
Yes, correct.
So is there something precluding you from raising it? The entrance?
There's a beam that runs across there for structural. I actually have it at 7'6", the automatic door.
Okay. And the concrete wall treatment, that is along that whole south wall, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The other thing I saw in the rendering, and you submitted quite a package on the screening of the HVAC equipment, the rooftop equipment. It shows that the screening has sort of a little pediment on it. And yeah, right there, you can see it. Given this building's architecture, the simplicity of this building's architecture, I would hope that you come up with something that is equally as simple for the screening. And that if there's a way to avoid having that little, that would be beneficial.
There is. That's an add-on.
That's an excellent suggestion. Excuse me for cutting you off, Mike. We agree. Simpler would be better and more consistent.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but going back to the entrance, I'm just wondering, because when you look at that elevation and you look at this rendering, the entrance kind of looks lost. And I don't know whether it looks, and proportionately, the 8-foot wide opening and 7'6" high just seems not right. So I'm wondering if you would consider possibly creating some kind of transom effect above that gives a little bit more prominence to this entrance.
The transom could be done. We could do that with a spandrel glass. We don't have we're trying to keep within the constraints of the structure, so we'd rather not make that transparent glass. But if a spandrel panel that imitates, well, that would be glass, you just can't see through it. If that would be acceptable, we could do that.
Yeah, or even just sort of offsetting, if there's a way to offset that area above the door, just so that it looks like this entrance has a little more presence.
Yes, we could do that.
Yeah, so.
For the Tiffany window look, but we can do that.
Okay.
If you look at A201, it might show it a little bit more to scale.
Hold on, let me look at A201. Yeah.
the south elevation.
Yeah, it just seems, I don't know. Given the height of that opening and the overhang, it just seems insignificant. So
I'd like to just point out one thing. It's a cannabis dispensary, so we do have some odor issues. The larger the access point we make, the more opportunity for air to escape. We've had so many constraints with this building because, again, we're trying to keep the overall elements of the building intact. And so we've been challenged greatly to meet all of these requirements, yet preserve the aesthetics of this building. So I just want to highlight that again, for the design point, it was to not make a huge entrance, again, to not allow air inside and out, and also for air conditioning reasons as well. We're in the desert in the summer. The bigger the entrance, the more air is going to be coming in and out. And so that was the intent there.
yeah, I'm not. I mean, it would be nice if you could do a higher entrance, but given the cost and structural issues and all that, all I'm suggesting is that maybe there's a way to make that entrance more predominant than what it currently is without compromising any of the odor issues or air conditioning or that sort of thing.
And if I may,
Absolutely.
Nick, what we had proposed, Nick, was a simulated larger entrance, but it wouldn't actually increase the opening area.
Understood. Yeah, the glass on top.
Right. And I understood from Chairman Rotman that is an acceptable approach.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what the committee decides, but that's my question.
Mr. Vice Chair Rotman, I just wanted to mention also from my comments earlier, there is also the opportunity to get an encroachment agreement from our engineering office. They would have to evaluate if there's any impacts to do that, for public easements and things like that, or existing utilities that might be there in the sidewalk. But that could be an opportunity to have a small planter in front of the storefront, if that's a recommendation of the committee.
Thank you, David.
Hey, Robert, I have one more question for the applicant. The existing storefront windows that were there on the south side that you're proposing to cover, are they at the same level as the height-wise as the ones that are on the east side of the building? The existing ones that are there that the staff is recommending that you keep?
Well, they appear to be. You can see from if you go back to the photograph, there's a 7-foot storefront door and about an 18-inch transom. If what you're implying is, can we make the ones on the south as high as the ones on the east? It seems like we could.
Well, I'm wondering if you could leave the existing door and the glass where it's at, the original glass, and close in a portion further back in the corner to give it more presence on the street, and using the existing opening that's there rather than covering it.
So in other words, moving the door and that opening that is on the south wall, moving that to the east, near the east corner?
Correct.
I'd like to defer to Mr. Wollen on that.
Yeah, again, I'll just state what I stated earlier is, our considered consultant brought this concern up that the entry was too close to the public sidewalk. We're also concerned about odor issues on the public sidewalk. We also have limited retail space in the showroom. And so that wall is giving us more retail space in the interior. And so that would really, I think, do a few things that we're trying to avoid.
Well, Well, I
So I
think that
would,
if you're talking about wall space, so inside the room, you're just flipping the door from one side to the other, so you'd have the same wall space inside. I understand your argument about the odor, but as far as retail space inside, if you have an opening on one side and you don't on the other, and you're just moving the door space, you're still gonna have the same opportunity inside for wall space.
Well, if you see the floor plan, there's a check-in area
yeah,
Mhm.
that is to be separated from the sales area.
and so the point is for security purposes to have staff behind there. Obviously that for support and to check in and to ID individuals. There's obviously age restrictions in entering this building that we have to meet. So that, again, I think for the purpose of this building, I think it's a little bold to put the entry point next to a public sidewalk, in my opinion.
A couple of Canada's places on Palm Canyon that do have their entrances right on the street sidewalk. I'm just saying that it's not unusual.
Yeah, and in their building and in their site plan, I think varies probably very significantly from, or significant from mine.
Can I throw out just a topic of conversation? So in the existing building on that south elevation where the door is, maybe that you keep that 3-foot wide space and put that in as a window, a fixed window, so that when you see this building, you have that sort of glazed corner look. And as you're coming from the south heading north, you can see more into your space, which would be, I think, a benefit to you. And then maybe instead of an 8-foot wide door, you rethink that and go down to a 6-foot wide door, 6-foot wide opening. Then you're still only losing maybe a foot of shear and maybe you still need that foot of shear, then maybe you change your entrance a little bit. But I think Member Thompson's point and staff's point about trying to maintain the glazing at the corner is a valid point. And I think a nice compromise would be to at least maintain 3 foot of it or 30 inches of it on the south elevation and adjust the entrance a little bit. Would you be open to that?
I'm not sure I fully understand. Are you proposing to put a window, like a 3-foot window on that edge?
Yeah, if the staff will, yes. Even if staff would pull up one of the original the existing building photos. One that's not boarded up. There we go. So see where the door is on the south elevation in that corner? Oh.
I want to point out that that's not inaccurate. That window has changed since then. This picture's from 1963. The entrances have been modified since then.
Is there an opening that is close to that corner?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I'm suggesting is that maybe you maintain that space and then fill in the part to the left. And the space that you maintain at the corner is glazed so that you at least have a glass corner, a glazed corner.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, I don't think I think that can be a compromise if that satisfies both council and staff.
You could think about a spandrel panel and that the whole length of that opening as well. You'd still have your display space inside, and it would give the impression of the window, the full width of that from the outside.
One of the things, though, because we have so much glass on the front and we are in the desert in such a low profile building, I'm concerned about some sunlight and heating elements. We're going to be kind of a fish jar already. So that was one of my concerns because the sunlight is very intense on the building.
Nick, if I can speak, when we refer to a spandrel panel, you'll actually have an insulated wall behind it. It's basically a possibly a fake window. But if I may speak to the aesthetics, and if you could go back, please, to the color board rendering. We and I think where we perhaps are struggling is the competing needs. One being how authentic do we stay with the existing building versus what can we do to create an aesthetic that that we were trying to achieve. In looking at that rendering, what we were trying to achieve on the south wall was this solid mass to give some degree of security. There is concern in the community that cannabis dispensaries need to be secure. But so that's the kind of one of the images, and we feel we're secure because facing the street, there's lots of, there's ability to see what's going on inside. But the other, what we're trying to achieve aesthetically is sort of this solid backdrop against the sign, and then with that step in the roof, you have this, in our opinion, this nice, strong, bold fascia, and it seems to beg to have something strong and stable to support it. And so we tried to keep the simplicity that is known with the mid-century modern, but do this one twist where we had this one solid mass, which in our opinion is a nice contrast to the completely transparent east facade. So to introduce a window at that corner, I think accomplishes what may be the commission's desire to still hail back to the mid-century modern open corner window thing. But it's at least is conflicting with our hope of having this big solid mass as a contrast to the transparent east facade. So sorry, that was such a long discussion, but the summary of that is we really like the contrast between the transparent on the front and the solid on the left, and introducing an additional window on the left we think would compromise that. Having said that, I don't think it's a deal killer for the owner or us, but that's our preference.
I agree. If it would satisfy council and staff, we would do it. But from a personal design standpoint, I feel that it aesthetically looks better without it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I have one question. Or maybe this is for staff. Are they required to have an area with a dumpster or for trash collection on site?
Yes, they would need to have a trash enclosure. And my understanding is that these dispensaries do not have a lot of trash associated with it. But of course, if the use were to move, then something else would move in that they would, it's a requirement. So it would have to be on a plan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Member Walsh?
I have none, thank you.
Okay. All right. So then we go to the committee discussion. Member Thompson.
You're picking on me first. I don't necessarily buy the argument why the original window can't stay and that be the new door and leave the part in the back. I understand their aesthetic, what they're going for, but I disagree with that. I think it would look better if the height of that window was the same as the ones on the front. It looks kind of diminutive on the side where they've got it. it would be nice if they could get a variance to have a flower bed in the front there, or some kind of a planter in the front to help soften the building as well. But otherwise, overall, I like it. I like it quite a bit.
Thank you. Member Poline.
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I think if we could get a planter approved in the front, it would really soften the front of the building. The render of the evening render with the you know, on the color page looks great. The way that the cactuses light against the wall. So if that's at all possible, I think we should go for it. I'm less convinced about the window on the corner. You know, I think if we can make the entrance a bit more more stately, I think that would help that facade. But I don't mind the contrast between the large windows and the more smooth wall, especially when it's going to be uplit like that. I think it'll look quite nice. Then my only other concern is that, you know, I'm a little bit worried about that kind of dead space behind the parking lot, you know, being becoming kind of a home, like a trash kind of area that, you know, that will become unkempt if it's not really well thought out. That's my comment.
Thank you. Member Locklear.
Yeah, I see Rick Manjaras on the call, but can I pick his brain? Wake him up, catch him sleeping, put him on the spot.
Sure you can.
Oh, Rick. So is there any way that maybe there's some way that the city, I mean, it looks like 20 feet, maybe 3 or 4 feet is occupied by those planters, those cutouts for those palm trees now. Is there some way there would be a cutout allowed in that concrete walkway in front of that building?
Yeah, if you guys would like, what we could do is work with the applicant. We could get with Felipe Primera in our office, who handles the encroachment agreements. And what we'd have to do is go out there in the field and actually make sure that we're not creating any ADA clearance spaces around some of the tree wells, or maybe some other utility boxes, or anything that might be in the way. We do have a lot of these encroachment agreements throughout Indian and downtown area. It just has to meet our criteria. And if it does meet it, and they do some utility locating, and it's not going to be setting, you know, plants or something like that on top of a utility line, then they could work with it. It's not free. There is a fee and an application for that. But we could work with the applicant to see if it's feasible.
Yeah. So not guaranteed, not free, but maybe doable. And, you know, that I imagine that Facade just gets, takes a beating from the heat also. And so it should be a real enhancement if it could cut down on some heat there from planting something there also.
We could work with them, and if it works out to that it could be done, then we'll work with them on making it happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds great. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
I didn't catch you. I was trying. Thanks, Rick.
Can I say one comment?
Yeah.
On the
Couple of
trees?
my other comments. Hold on, Robert. I had a couple more items also. So that planter along the north side of the parking lot also, it looks like that's a proposed curb. It's item number 7 points to, and then it shows 24 inches measured to the outside of that curb, which at best guess could be 18 inches on the inside dimension of that planter, which doesn't allow too much for a hedge there at all. I'm not sure what kind of hedge is proposed there, but not going to be too much that's going to survive in there. So I'd like to recommend that we propose a wider planter in there and get some real landscape along that entire, it looks like there's plenty of room for planting along there. If we could get an even wider, maybe a 3 or 3.5 foot planter along there and increase that if there's still enough room for widening, especially if it's only one-way traffic on that exit path there. Maybe they're showing bollards, I think is that symbol, number 18.
That's uplighting.
Oh, it's uplighting. Is it possible to get planting along that north side of the facade there?
The idea of the 2 trees north of the loading zone is that they would be in planters so that they could be moved in case the loading zone needed to be increased.
The 2 trees north of the loading zone, but they don't appear to be, is there a planter below them?
No, I was thinking that they would be potted plants.
Potted plants, potted trees,
Potted trees.
just sitting on top of the asphalt?
Well, so that they would be movable.
Mm. Yep. You guys own this building, isn't that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is landscape plan, this site plan looks like it. This is another example going similar to my comments on that previous project where there's a lot of hard surface here, where these very hard surfaces, horizontal surfaces meeting these very hard vertical surfaces, not a ton of room for drainage, and you know, the roof plan draining to the site plan, which is kind of a recipe for poor drainage anyway. I might recommend that you guys look at some additional planters along the north side of the facade here, including right there on the north side of the loading zone. I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to just cut some planters into there, why you need the flexibility to have not have a permanent planter area north of the loading zone and north of the facade of that building there along the entire north facade. I felt in a similar way along the south property line where you just show you have a number 2 which says property line. Why not have a planter along that entire south property line? And I felt like there was a rendering somewhere that showed a hedge.
It is.
But there's no hedge proposed on the site plan. Yeah, there's a hedge shown on the rendering just before. It's page 36 of the digital presentation file, 36 of 43. It would be nice to see a hedge there as you drive down the street, or some type of planting. It doesn't have to be a continuous hedge, but it sure would be nice to see some planting. Likewise, as I go back to that site plan, it sure would, to me, be nice to see some planting along the south side of the building somewhere. And if not underneath the covered space, outside of the covered space where you show uplighting on the building. Again, you know, decreasing this hard horizontal surface where it meets this hard vertical surface in places, if not in its entirety.
If I may speak to that.
Well,
Our
I don't know if that was a question. I'm just throwing it out there. I think are we in the
We're in committee discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Understood.
I'm complete with my comments.
Thank you. Who's next? Member Dozy.
Thank you. I agree with Member Locklear on developing planter along the north side and even along the south side as well, to somehow, you know, tie, whether even it could be a flush curb or whatever, but to somehow define, you know, the building and walkways from the asphalt areas. And I would also like to see that the hardscape be clearly defined as it shows in the renderings from the asphalt. So because one of the, you know, the walkway comes from the rear of the building towards the front to the door there. and that hardscape be clearly defined, either as a new material or some type of edge. And I think that we do need to see a more refined landscape plan when it comes back, particularly addressing that area west of the parking lot, that open space. And I'm okay with the proposed entry and the solid wall that they show uplit. I think that kind of creates some drama along there. So that's the end of my comments.
Member Walsh?
Yeah, I wanted to tick off a couple things here. I think the opportunity to secure a minor encroachment permit and get a little bit of planting on the front of the building on that east elevation would be a good thing. I think that the south elevation is okay. I think as explained by the architect and the owner, it does make some sense to me. I think one of the issues though might be the lack of understanding where the front door is. It's kind of architecture 101. And the fact that it's sort of around the side there is a challenge. And I kind of, as I look at it, I almost think that there needs to be some visual magnet, quick visual magnet at the end of that walk, right, adjacent to the door, you know, a planter, something that animates that point where the front door is a little more successfully. And again, it's because that first time visit, I think it could be confusing to understand where the door is. And then the one-way entrance and exit, I understand why they would happen. It just seems like other than arrows on the ground, is there some sort of signage or whatever that would alert you, do not turn right at that first northern entrance, because traffic does come down there on Indian at a pretty good clip. And I could just see that being a little bit problematic. And then my last point was, yeah, I mean, much of this is a need for a developed landscape plan, site plan, landscape plan, including drainage, absolute specifics in terms of the planting. That space at the west end that just kind of looks like no man's land needs to be grabbed and integrated into the overall project. But I think it's a delightful building. This is like a resurrection instead of a remodel. It's wonderful. It'd be great to see.
Agreed. I think it is a wonderful building. Yep. And super encouraging to see it being resurrected.
Vice Chair, can we have a comment about the signage?
I was going to make a comment about the signage. The signage is fine. I think it actually works well with the building. And I will repeat Member Walsh and Locklear's comments on what a delightful remodel or resurrection of this building this is. I also I agree that the south elevation doesn't really need that corner, that window. But I do think that something needs to happen to announce the entrance more, whether it's the transom or something. But to me, the entrance is lost, not only from Indian Canyon, but also from that whole south elevation. I think my previous comments about simplifying the HVAC rooftop equipment screen should happen. And I agree with the landscaping. I think it needs to be developed more, thought out more. And I think, I don't, and it should include a trash enclosure. So with that, unless somebody else has some comments, I'd like a motion.
I just wanted to add one thing. As I'm looking at Google Maps at the building to the south, which is the Sun building, I think it's going to be kind of hard to get. I don't know if we'd want to have a tall hedge on that side, because it really could conflict with the architecture of that building. So,
on the south side?
Yeah, on the south side.
I think that's a good point. I think as I was looking towards the south, on even one of their photos. I thought how nice it would be for the folks from the south to look towards the north into their refreshed parking lot. So kind of agree with that. As it gets improved anyway.
Yep. Great.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion somewhere? Somebody?
I'll make a motion for approval that would incorporate the comments regarding a planter along the north side of the building, that they come back with a complete landscape or a site plan and landscape plan, detailed site plan and landscape plan. It includes the dumpster and all the plant materials and sizes. And that the, as mentioned, that the AC equipment and utilities be reconfigured and simplified. And that the hardscape be defined clearly from the asphalt parking drives and parking area. And to encourage them to tie the loading dock and the proposed planters and tree wells in the back of the building together with some type of edge or curb, even if it's a flush curb, but to better delineate the spaces adjacent to the building from the drive aisles and parking.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll take member Lockyer. He was louder than you, John.
I was going to say I was louder.
Missed anything you could add to it?
All right, we have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It looks like that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Nice project.
Yeah, great work on this one, guys.
Yeah.
Really good.
Does the committee want to take a break?
Yes.
No, it's 7:42.
Yes.
Yes.
5-minute break?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Mhm.
Okay. We'll see you at 7:48.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think everyone's back and we are recording again.
I'm going to recuse from this project and the next one.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
There we go. Better?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lockyer. So we're moving on now to item number 4. Greg Hickey, owner, proposing construction of a 3,946 square foot single-family residence on a hillside lot located at 2274 Winter Sun Drive, planning area for Desert Palisades Pacific Plan. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, indeed. Well, as you know, a Desert Palisades house has lots and lots of charts and tables to go through, which is why you have a horribly long 22-page staff report. But let me go through the slides here real quickly and introduce you to this house and our recommendations and answer any questions you may have. So as the chair read into the item, this is a Desert Palisades house, 3,946 square feet with pools and terraces. The grade change on this lot is roughly 20 feet from west to east, going downward in that direction. There is a boulder berm along the rear or north side of the lot, as you can see from this photo. By the way, are you getting my shared screen or not?
No.
Oh.
I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I'm sitting here enjoying the PowerPoint, and you guys don't get the advantage of it. Okay. So as I was saying, there's the size of the house, grade change of 20 feet roughly west to east, boulder berm along the rear, which buffers the views of the homes from Tramway, and the project is proposed to have a naturalized landscape design. As you can see from the site plan here, the home is basically an L-shaped home with the steps with the topography of the lot. So it's generally higher on the west side, and it steps down as the home goes toward the master suite, which is at the far east end. The design necessitates a fairly large area to be graded because of the L-shaped configuration of the house and the large terrace area that you see behind that large front wall. One item I would note, which differs a bit or deviates from the development standards or the design guidelines for Desert Palisades specific plan, is that the garage door on this particular proposal does face the street and does have a 16-foot wide driveway. Now, the Desert Palisades guidelines encourage garage doors to be screened or offset or set to the side. In this particular case, due to the topography and the heavy amount of rock that exists on the west edge of the lot, the architect originally had this garage set 90 degrees, taking side access, but it just wasn't working. And so it was reoriented as you see here. The one item that I will note is the driveway is 16 feet wide. The Desert Palisades specific plan requires them only to be 14 feet wide. So we've noted that that doesn't conform in that regard, but it is fairly close. Obviously, the difference between 14 and 16 feet. Here are the elevations of the home. Starting in the lower right-hand corner, this is the street facade, and there's this very large rock veneer wall with a steel plate framing that sets up a certain cadence or rhythm to the partitions in this wall. The wall has a large opening here with a very large cantilevered cover here that is announces the pedestrian entry into the home. This elevation you see here is the east. This large black element here in front is the pool. The pool has a fairly large or tall wall, which is the side of the pool. It kind of sticks out of the ground as it goes to the east. And one of the items you're going to see as I discuss this further is that will be needing some screening to reduce the overall impact of that 7-foot high wall. This is the north or the rear facade of the home. It's very simplistic, volumetric, white or light gray with the various openings that you see. And here you will note there's a very large and dramatic cantilevered roof that comes off the master bedroom suite toward the east. And then lastly, this is the west elevation here. This site section gives you a brief sense. This is looking south. So as though you were standing, slicing this, looking from Tramway toward the south. Here you see that large wall of the east edge of the swimming pool, which will need to have some boulders and plantings put here in order to help screen it. And here you can see the overall height limits. Desert Palisades has a height limit of 18 feet. And the home, for the most part, does conform to that. There's a small area at that large cantilever at the master bedroom that I spoke of that does pop through the overall height limit very, very slightly. Here you can see a perspective. So in this particular image, the street is to your left. This over here on the left side is that very large, massive rock wall that's framed in black steel. Here you see the main public areas of the home, living room and dining room, and a very, very generous overhang and terrace here with an opening in it here for architectural effect. And then another large stone veneer wall here that closes sort of the north side of this outdoor terrace and provides both a surface texture to this area as well as screening from the prevailing northwesterly winds. And then this area here is the master bedroom suite with that very large cantilevered roof. Here's a little bit better view showing how the home lays out on the site. The site is generally a naturalized landscape plan. Because the site does have a rather large footprint, including the terraces, there's going to be a lot of grading on this site, although mass grading is, of course, discouraged in Desert Palisades. But this home, by the nature of its overall layout, will require quite a bit of grading. I've noted, as I spoke earlier, about the screening of the easterly wall of the pool. And part of what we're recommending here to be consistent with the Desert Palisades specific plan is that the pavement be a pervious pavement in the terraces and driveways to the extent possible, and that those joints also be pervious as noted in the Desert Palisades specific plan. The plant palette that you'll see in your packet does conform generally to the Desert Palisades plant list. There are some plants that do deviate from that, but those are plants that were previously approved by the Desert Palisades HOA. And so we are recommending that those plants be approved as well. This is the material board, excuse me. And these two right here in the middle are basically your primary building colors. It's a very, very light gray. And then the areas where the pocket doors occur, this very, very dark, almost charcoal gray color is proposed. This is an example of the stone veneer. This is a real stone veneer wall that's being proposed. And the stone tones are, as you see here, kind of in a mottled gray. These two images down here indicate the granular appearance of the concrete. So the concrete will basically be this normal gray color. However, some of it will have a larger washed aggregate as you see here, and some of it will have a smaller granular aggregate as you see here, but it will be in this color that you see there. And then the wood accent panels are, of course, as you see here in the glazing. So let me just go through a little bit in your staff report now, if I may, and I'll close this thing off. As you'll see on page 2, you note where the lot is located within the overall Desert Palisades tract. And it's one of those along the Winter Sun Drive, which is the northernmost street in that subdivision. The images that are later in your staff report are those which I've shared with you on the slide presentation. But your beginning of the analysis of the home against the various guidelines and tables of the Desert Palisades specific plan and the ESA SP zone begin on page 5. And so the first one is the reviewing it against the Standard Hillside Development Standards from 93.13 of the zoning code. And you'll note that in almost all cases, the project is conforming. The area where they were unable to achieve full conformance was again in the parking area and the garage. On page 6 and going backward then are the guidelines and the evaluation of the project against the standard design guidelines of 94.04 of the zoning code. And we've noted that in most cases, the project also is harmonious and complementary to the area and the homes adjacent to it. The one thing that we've noted at a staff level that there may be some concern about is the overall presence of that large rock wall in the front. It's roughly 12 feet in height, roughly 80 feet in length, and it may be perceived by some to be rather harsh in its appearance. It obviously provides a privacy to the outdoor terrace area and to the large areas of glass behind it, but it is a little unusual given the more volumetric and open nature that you see in many of the Desert Palisades homes. Onward, as you get toward page 8 of your staff report, you're reviewing it against the development standards of the Desert Palisades specific plan. And here I note at the bottom of that page that in the back master bedroom, that cantilevered roof pops a little bit above the maximum height blanket by about 7.5 inches. On the top of page 9, there's an illustration that was provided by the architect, which helps show that point. It's a very, very small portion of the roof area that projects a little bit above that 18-foot blanket. All other aspects of it here do conform with the exception of what I mentioned on the driveway and the garage. And then moving on in the staff report, I'm not going to go through all of these long tables. I want to just point out that in almost all cases, this project does conform and is complementary of the development standards, both for the ESA zone, 9404, 9413 of the zoning code, and the specific outlines that are in the specific plan. I want to note on page 14 of your staff report, there's mention of the pool, and we've talked about the screening of that large retaining wall on the east side. The pool will also be shifted slightly toward the west because there is a 5-foot setback for water from the adjacent property line, and so the pool will need to shift slightly toward the west on the site plan. Okay, so onward as I'm looking through my staff report, this particular table for the Desert Palisades design guidelines is really long. And in almost all cases, this project is consistent with that. I've noted on the page 17, when it talks about the exterior walls, there's a discussion in the Desert Palisades specific plan about homes being nestled into the sites and blending with the natural colors in that area. And as you know, the Desert Palisades area is really, really rocky. And most of those rocks, of course, are granite composition, but there are also some grays and browns from the desert varnish that you see on a lot of that rock. So the home is going to be in contrast a bit with the natural colors on the site. But there has been kind of a trend in that direction. Many of the homes up there are also in rather bright neutral colors. So this home will be no different in that regard. There is a photovoltaic system proposed on the roof, as noted on the bottom of page 18, and that is proposed to be screened by parapets. Then beginning on page 19 is the analysis of the landscape guidelines for Desert Palisades, and I have noted on the first item there the plant types that deviate from the Palisades plant palette, but which have been approved on other projects by the HOA. And so we're again recommending those as being appropriate here again. And then lastly, table 7 is the analysis against the specific requirements of the ESA SP zone. And as you can see on page 21, this project is consistent with those. So our recommendation on this project is to recommend approval. There's a couple of conditions we put on the front page about the permeability of the concrete and the screening of the easterly pool wall. But otherwise, we feel this is an appropriate project for the area and are recommending that you recommend approval to the Planning Commission. That ends my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. Nick LaFaro is here from Studio AR&D to answer any other questions you may have. And the homeowner is here as well. Thank you. I left
Thank
you
you,
also.
Ken. Do we have any? Ken, I'll ask a question. Ken, you mentioned that the pool's moving to the west, and can you explain exactly? You said it was too close to the property line.
When you look at the city's ordinances and the zoning code relative to water features and pools, the water line is required to be 5 feet from the adjacent property line. This pool is a little bit too close in that regard, and so they'll be conditioned to shift it a little bit toward the west.
Okay, that it confuses me because when I look at the site plan, it looks like it's behind the setback line, and if I move it to the west, it's going to get closer to the setback line.
Well, if you look at the site plan, and these don't have sheet numbers, but the pool is on the east side of the property. And so it has to move to the left or to the west. You'll see there the property line and the dashed line is there. There's an open space buffer between the two lots. And these types of measurements are taken from the property line, not from the center line of the buffer.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I guess we'll hear from the applicant. Please state your name and tell us about your project. You have 10 minutes. And if desired, after any public comment, 2 minutes of rebuttal.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nick LaFaro, project manager at Studio AR&D Architects. Thank you, Ken. It was a very thorough presentation. We're very excited about this project and this property in Desert Palisades. The clients feel very privileged to be one of the first to get an approved home up there and to start building. So when we first started analyzing this site, we wanted to optimize the views, which were to the east and to the south. So we started framing those views from the living room and the master bedroom. This L shape also did help us create shelter for the courtyard and the pool from the northwest winds. As Ken noted, the site does change from 20 feet overall from the west towards the east. So we have a split level of sorts where the western portion is 4 feet higher than the eastern portion. And as you continue from the living room to the pool, the main living space outside is still at the same level as the living room. And we step down 4 feet to where we enter the pool. Another driving force for this floor plan, it was all about the site and really capturing the views. So we have these pass-through spaces, pass-through glass, through fixed glass and sliders. Most of these sliders pocket into heavy textured stucco walls, integral color. That really has helped us engage the site. You'll see we have a lot of fire pits and different reading areas. The clients like to read and have morning coffee. We've got outdoor TV. As Ken stated, we really tried pushing for that side entry garage door, but once we realized the pool couldn't go as east as we wanted, we had to abandon the side entry. Also, the natural topography just didn't allow for it based on California requirements for driveway slope. We're maximizing it. Material selection was really important to us. So we wanted something that was low maintenance and durable. And we also wanted something natural. You know, this is Desert Palisades. So we didn't want all these jewelry fake pieces up there. So we chose a natural stone that's honest and raw. We're also trying to utilize the existing boulders and proposed landscape as part of our material palette also. The form itself is very contemporary and minimal. The front feature wall is the tallest wall on the project. And as Ken noted, that's for a couple reasons. One was for screening some of the solar panels on the roof, for instance, and our dog houses, but it's mainly for privacy. Desert Palisades, there's no property walls, which is what makes it so great. But, you know, we do need to get some privacy in there. So we created this feature with awesome stone material, and we're also incorporating some slump stone masonry walls with a heavy grouted texture on there. That's going to be a tan color that really blends into the site, which shows up in the renderings. Overall, we're really happy with this project. We love the pool design. We like the contrast between this contemporary pool T-shape with infinity edge on all sides. And we know we've got this large 7-foot drop on the east side. So we've been working with Ken on how we're gonna screen that with boulders and landscape. But overall, really happy with this project and the clients too. It's a fun one.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we call for public comment, if there's any. And David, we have any? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to questions from the committee to the applicant. Are there any questions? How about Mr. Poline? You are muted.
Thank you, sorry. Yeah, the only question I had is looking at the 4 elevations, it appears as though there's kind of a real contrast between the elevations in color. The north rear elevation, I'm not sure if that's a lighting effect or it just seems very white. So it feels like the building kind of has a different feel on the 4 sides. So I was curious to know about the sort of the west and the north elevations.
The west is more, in line with what we were trying to present. We were struggling with getting the light settings on that north one to be more light gray, which is what we're proposing.
Okay, so it is just a rendering issue.
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks.
Member Thompson,
I don't have any questions.
Member Walsh. You're muted.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Member Josie.
I have a question. On the front elevation, we have I believe it's 12 foot, some inches, the stone like facade wall. And there's an opening in that where you enter, you're outside, but you're still outside, and there's another wall behind that leads you then to the entry door, which you would turn to the left. How tall is the wall that's behind there, kind of creating that entry foyer?
That masonry wall, the garden wall is 5 feet tall.
5 feet tall.
Which is the maximum that Desert Palisades will allow.
So, okay, so you're outside, you kind of enter through the entry portal, and then you're still outside, and there's a 5 foot wall then that screens the pool area.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you. On the site plan, there's a squiggly line that goes off to the east of your front stone wall. Is that a fence?
It is a fence. It's an open steel post fence that'd be about 3 inches on center. We're looking at using 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch HSS tubes, 5 feet tall, probably going with a natural rust patina for that. And it's mostly for security and some privacy. Like I said, they're offset at 3 inches. So we've got about 2 inches in between each. So we're not trying to create a total statement with this, but we do want some privacy there and security.
And will that carry along the property line as well, or do you need to provide some sort of fencing around the pool, or you're high enough up that you don't require, there's enough difference with your grading and the boulders and whatever that you don't need to provide that?
So that's something we've discussed with Ken, and we would like to utilize the natural terrain and boulders and kind of do the pool barrier as a design build with city inspectors. So to answer your question, no, we don't want to continue this down the entire property line.
Okay. And the last question is, the stone that you select, when you look at your renderings, it shows that it's a little warmer and that there's a little more variety in color. Is that true, or is it really all the same, pretty consistent as the sample that you've shown in your material board?
I would say these renderings are pretty realistic to the amount of variation you'll see.
So there are some warmer color elements to it?
Yes, you're not going to see real dark browns or anything. It's all within the same gray family, but they will vary between a light gray and a warmer gray. No browns though.
Okay. And then on your roof plan, Ken mentioned that there's going to be solar panels. Do you have a layout for that, where they're going to occur? I didn't see it on the roof plan.
Right. We're going to keep them strictly over the garage.
Over the garage. Okay. Okay. And then one last question, and the extent of the cantilever outside the master bedroom, it looks like it lines up with the pool edge. And I'm not sure if that's what's governing the length of that or not. But tell me, what is governing the length of that cantilever?
We designed this outdoor area for them with oversized lounge chairs and a fire pit, and we wanted to protect that as much as we could with an overhang. So we worked with Ken and the city to see what our limitations were. Once we got it to where it is, we were trying to align it with the pool. But it was really the function of that outdoor space and being sheltered that drove that cantilever size.
So if the pool shifts to the west, it will not shift as well.
Correct. It will not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Then we will open up for committee discussion. Let's see. Let's start with Member Dozy.
Thank you. I'm going back to the front facade of the stone wall with the garage door and then the opening that leads to the entrance. And as described, I believe it was 80 feet long. And, I'm looking at it a couple different ways. One, it makes a major statement as this stone wall, the simplicity of it. But I was wondering if there isn't the possibility of somehow transitioning, that statement wall, because there's like a pool equipment area that's kind of floating out there. And I didn't know if that could somehow be integrated where as you go across with this large facade wall that then stepping down and even in another plane, stepping back, could be this lower wall that may be of the same material that begins to bring the height of that wall down into the landscape, and you could integrate boulders into it. And the same thing could happen over on the garage side. There's a walkway that comes from the driveway and then it leads along the side of the garage and then goes down some steps. And I was wondering if there couldn't be another like thin wall that's in a different plane than the front facade wall, but again, at a lower height, maybe of the same material, so that it begins to give some movement in the front of that stone wall and facade, and then begins to tie that into the architecture into the site. And that's my only comment.
Oh, thank you. Member Thompson.
I think that this is a similar house, if not the same house, that's built out in Echo Lane in Rancho Mirage. And I've seen it in person, and it's actually quite amazing with that big rock wall like that. I kind of rather like it. I don't have any issues with it. I think it's a great looking project. It's my only comments.
Okay, thank you. Member Walsh? You're muted, by the way.
Sorry. Again, on the wall, which is sort of the raison d'etre of the whole thing, and it's kind of the magnet. Staff report did point out that it was inconsistent, I think, with the standards in terms of the way it fronts the property, but you either kind of love it or not. And I think it's a real anchor in terms of the aesthetics and a commitment in terms of the design direction. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Member Pauline.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. The wall is imposing in a lot of ways. So I think having an opportunity, and I like Member Dozy's comment about the idea of introducing kind of smaller elements of the wall that could potentially kind of ease it into the landscape a little bit. I mean, I love it overall. It just feels very, it's imposing. And I know that's kind of the goal and what they're striving for, but it feels like it could integrate slightly better. That's all I have. Otherwise, beautiful.
And I'm not in disagreement with any of the comments. I think it's a a nice project. I have a little concern that the wall is imposing, and that is the purpose of it. But and maybe the comments of trying to introduce similar elements around the pool equipment or some of the landscape site walls, maybe that is would benefit it, that it would ease it into the site a little bit more. So I would be open to that. And just to respond to staff's recommendations, I would be in agreement with all of them. So do we have a motion? Unless there's further discussion.
Can I add one more item?
Sure.
Did the lighting, the landscape lighting plan be reviewed for the quantity of fixtures and also the wattage? Calls all of them out as 4.5 watts of LED. I think some of those could be softer, if they were continue, 2-watt LED gives you a lot of light. And I just feel like for that area up there to have 67 lights might be kind of imposing on the site.
Okay.
And I like landscape lighting, but maybe a balance.
All right. We have a motion. Member Walsh, unmute your.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to accept with the full integration of planning recommendations, number one. Secondly, a review per Mr. Dorsey's comment about the lamping and the light wattage for the landscape lighting.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any amendments? I'll ask that first before we vote. No amendments, then all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Thank you very much. Nice job. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
We now move on to item number 5. Marino owners for a major architectural application proposing a 7,125 square foot single-family residence and accessory structures on a 39,940 square foot hillside lot located at 1405 Rose Avenue, Zone R1C. May we have a staff report?
Yes, sir. Hold on just a moment and I'll share my screen to start with this time. Are you seeing the shared screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, as the title implies, a single family residence on a hillside lot. This one is on Rose Avenue. And if those of you who are familiar with Rose Avenue, there's a portion of the north end of it that's gated. And this is 2 lots actually that will be merged into one. And the gate occurs kind of midpoint on this lot. So this house really needs to be considered in terms of it being kind of a campus or a compound of many different functions and uses and elements. So you have the main house, which is also, this is the house behind a wall kind of a concept. So you have the main house. You then have a swimming pool that has a cabana. And then next you have a bocce ball court and a small shade structure related for that. And then you have a gym. And the gym is attached to an accessory dwelling unit. And adjacent to the accessory dwelling unit is a covered carport. And off to the south and west of the carport is a proposed pickleball court. So it is really a lot going on this property and in a very exciting project. Here you're able to see the project from looking to the north and east. So the pickleball court is in the foreground. That's the accessory dwelling unit. There's the gym. Here you see the home. And this is also a home that, a lot that has quite a bit of topography, roughly a 32-foot grade change from north to south. And again, the architect and the landscape architect are proposing a naturalized landscape plan. So here is that pool cabana or small shade structure, the swimming pool, and then the home wrapping around to the north side. Here it is in plan. I'm going to start at the north. This is basically a circular drive that provides access to 4-car garage. And the garage is turned to the north so that it is screened from view by the street or from the street. This area to the back of that is the master suite. And then the home lies out behind the wall with the public spaces, living room, dining room, kitchen, and then 3 bedrooms. And the home steps down so that this area by the garage and the master bedroom suite are at the highest point. And then it steps down to the living room, steps down again to the bedrooms. And then once you go on to the site, the pool elevation is on access with the main entrance. And off to the side is the covered pavilion. There's an outdoor dining area and an outdoor kitchen. And then some lounging areas here. And then as you see in the middle of the site here, steps downward to take you to the bocce ball court, and then more steps downward to take you to the accessory dwelling unit and gym, and then more steps downward to get you onto the pickleball court. These are the elevations. The top elevation here is the street elevation as seen from Rose Avenue. And the lower one is the west elevation, basically behind the wall. This is a site section, which also helps illustrate the significant amount of topography that this particular site has. Now, I unfortunately cannot show you the relative placement of the swimming pool in this, but understand that it's further off here to the right. But here you can see how the home is kept very low, very horizontal, and then steps with the topography of the site. And then over here on the far north end of the site, it's quite a steep slope that goes up to the next adjacent existing home. A couple of more perspectives that kind of help understand this. There are photovoltaics proposed on the roof of the garage and the master suite, as you can see here. This is that motor court and the circular drive that I spoke of earlier. And there is a series of concrete pads that are basically kind of overlapping one another that bring you up to that main entrance, which acts as a very focused sort of portal. And on access to the pool, you'll see in your packet, there's a number of delicious renderings that were part of this package that really clearly tell the story of what this design is all about. The pickleball court is proposed to have nighttime lighting. And in order to do nighttime lighting here in Palm Springs on a tennis court or pickleball court, one does require to have a conditional use permit. And so the project includes the major architectural conditional use permit for the night lighting, and then an AMM because this one has a little bit of an over height issue as well. This is a photo, sorry, not a photometric, but a kind of an illustration showing how the lighting will occur on the pickleball court. The pickleball court does lie just at the south end of the project site and is separated from the adjacent home by existing landscaping and a 6-foot-high block wall. I've done this small enlargement of this photometric site plan. So this area right here is shown over here. And you can see there's a little bit of light spillage that is showing up with this calculus on the lighting. And I was in correspondence with Nick earlier this evening, and they are planning to install a set of custom shields that will help eliminate the potential for any light spillage onto the adjacent parcel. And that's important because the adjacent home is built right up to that side yard setback. And so their enjoyment of the night sky and so on will be critical for these lights to be properly controlled. This is the material board, and Nick didn't touch on it, and I hope he will talk a little bit more about it. But this particular project has a very, very unique cast in place concrete wall. And as it was explained in the executive summary, These slabs will be actually poured in forms that are laid on the site, and it will be coated on the inside of that formwork with a white cement material that will actually then be on this undulating concrete wall. And then just like a typical tilt-up construction, these panels will be craned into place and then secured. And they do have these small slots that bring a little bit of light and opening into this overall surface. So quite an interesting design element on this particular home. Again, these are your material selections. The concrete is proposed in a standard gray, but with a washed aggregate. You have these colors, which are basically your primary colors in the home. There's heavy textured, dark charcoal colored stucco on those accent walls in the home. And then there are portions of wood, and I'm going to let Nick explain that a little bit further. So that concludes my staff report. This one, I do not have any particular conditions that we're recommending on it. Of course, the house will have its typical conditions of approval that are put on any hillside home. But that basically concludes this, my presentation. The home is conforming, as you will see in the tables that begin on page 5 of your staff report. Excuse me. And as I noted, the landscaping is desert tolerant, desert appropriate, and again, as naturalized as possible. Again, because this is a very, very large campus of structures and elements, there's going to be a lot of grading here. But their intent is to renaturalize the site so that they have a smooth transition between the open space to the west and the lot itself. That concludes my staff report, and I'm available to answer any questions. And of course, Nick is here, and Mr. Marino is the homeowner, is also here. Thank you.
Do we have any, thank you, Ken. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have one question. Ken, is there any limits to the number of driveway openings that can occur on a single family residence?
There would be more of a concern if this was on a major thoroughfare or a secondary thoroughfare, Tom. But in this particular case, you will see, even on some of the major thoroughfares, where there will be a driveway turnaround with 2 curb cuts if you're doing a in and out, so to speak, on major thoroughfares. If this was the original 2 lots, that is what is part of the tract on this particular project, these 2 lots being merged, of course, to make this project, they would each have had their own driveways. So this one does have 3, but it's not unusual given the very long frontage along the street that the project has.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ken, I didn't hear you talk much about the administrative modification. Would you talk about that a little?
Sure. The administrative minor modification, or AMM, is required on this one because the home does have some slight overages in height. And where that primarily is seen, maybe I can share my screen with you again, and I think it is best illustrated on the some of these renderings. So let me just go back here a minute. You'll note that as the building moves to the south, let me see if I can find it better. Here you go. This really gives you a pretty good sense of the grade change on this site. So the top of the wall is kept at a standard uniform height. And then as the site drops off, the wall increases in height. And so down here at this end, it's actually at about, I believe it's about 16 to 18 feet from the adjacent grade. And when you look at the standard development standards for the R1 zone, at the front yard setback, the maximum height is 12. And that height can raise at a rate of 1 to 3 to a maximum of 18. So in this case, the AMM is being requested in order to accommodate the design characteristic of this wall growing in height as it goes toward the south end of the building.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else have questions? If not, we'll hear from the applicant. Please give us your name and talk about the project. You have 10 minutes and 2 minutes of rebuttal after any public comment.
Okay. Hi, Nick LaFaro again from Studio ARD Architects. Ken, are you able to pull up that site plan again?
Yeah, hold on just a moment. That one?
Yep, that'll do. Again, thank you, Ken, for that great presentation, really breaking down the project. So this is 2 vacant lots. Our clients were very pleased when they found these and immediately started looking at how we could start to merge this and create a compound for their active family and their lifestyle. It's a hillside home with about 35 feet of difference from the north to the south. So we took that into account while designing. Also, another driving force was western views. Those mountains to the west are good. So we wanted to maximize on views from all spaces of this property. Working our way from north to south, the northeast had the least amount of views, so that's naturally where we put our garage, and we wanted a side entry garage to keep that front facade clean, which led its way to creating this interesting motor court. Again, the topo really drove that decision. You're entering from the north about 5 or 6 feet higher than the garage, so you're coming down and flying into the site, if you will. Northwest corner where the master bedroom, spectacular views. So that's another place where we maximize and design based on the site. So this garage and the master bedroom are actually 2'6" higher than the living room. That living room, we selected that floor plane by analyzing the site and finding a contour that had the same amount of cut and fill. And we really wanted to capture those west views. So designing this, we really kept the human scale in mind. Most of these ceiling heights are 9'8", 9'10". In the living room, it pops up to 10'8" and slopes gently towards the west to where the sliders are at 12'8". Again, these aren't massive spaces. We're really considering the human element and how you're experiencing this site. So activating the site was really critical through landscape and nodes of activity. You see, we've got a cabana with a really spectacular outdoor kitchen, a pool and spa, which will have covers on them for security. As we step down, we have the bocce ball court, we have the shade structure. We continue down to a gym and a casita. And this casita is going to be, again, they're very family oriented. So it's going to be inhabited mostly by Patsy's mother, and they have a niece who's a resident artist that would be staying there as well. So we have created this separate carport structure for the resident of that casita with a motorized gate for security. Going back to the front facade, these concrete walls, I'm going to touch more on what Ken was saying and what the intent was here. We wanted to create this flowing, undulating material, and we're going to be using Portland white cement, and we'll be creating CNC negative forms, bringing those out to site. We're going to set up a special spot down probably on the southern portion, and we'll be pouring and casting these, creating this flowing articulation of the wall, and then separating them by 15 inches with these slits of windows that help frame views and also create a unique lighting environment as you're walking down as a guest staying in this house, or just looking at the art that we're going to be hanging throughout these gallery corridors that we've created. again, looking at this facade, we've juxtaposed this warm board and batten vertical wood siding, this warmth against the more cold undulating white concrete. We have applied for an AMM because as we worked with this form, the house steps down another 4'6" from the living room to those guest rooms. And we wanted to maintain this single architectural form. And like Ken was saying, this house behind the walls. So creating that, setting that wall height and continuing it home was really important to us. And it really also helped us hide the stepping of the roof and the stepping of the structure and create this uniform aesthetic. Down to the pickleball court, we have applied for a conditional use permit for this. We're working closely with Ken to minimize the impact on neighbors. So first issue is visibility. We've sunken it 4 feet. Another issue was sound. And if you go to that site plan again, Ken, we've actually, that lighting exhibit showed one existing masonry wall along the south. We're actually proposing to add another one to really help buffer the sound. And we've created this planter space in between the pickleball court and that new secondary masonry wall. The third item was the lights, and as Ken touched upon, we will be creating these shrouds to help direct the light down and to completely minimize the light leakage. I also want to tell you that these clients are social players. They just want to activate their lifestyle. They're not going to be playing out there like 2 hours max beyond dusk. They won't be playing for 4 months out of the year during summer when it's too hot to even play. They are open to discussion too, if this becomes a topic for the neighbors as well. But overall, we've created a project, a compound that fits, that was designed for our clients' lifestyle. This is their second home, their first custom home in Palm Springs. Back in 2018, they revitalized their mid-century Alexander home that's also in Las Palmas. And since COVID and living in Palm Springs for the past few years, they really want to make this a home for their family. And we're excited to help them. I think it's a pretty cool architecture that, with their help, we're proposing to the city.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
David or Ken, anybody from the public wishing to speak?
Nobody had contacted me. I have forwarded to the AAC members 2 pieces of public comment that were received, one from the adjoining neighbor to the south and one from the neighbor that is immediately east of the project site. And those you have in your packets.
Okay. Thank you. If not, then we'll move on to questions to the applicant from the committee.
I have a question.
Member Dan.
Hey, Nick, on those freeform concrete pieces up front, the very farthest south one, how tall is it?
I believe it's 18 feet tall, that portion. Bear with me 1 second. In our booklet, it's 17'2" above our finished floor of that bedroom, which is about a foot higher than finished grade. So about 18'2".
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I'm just going to add to that question. In the 18 feet 2 inches, what is the height of it above the curb elevation or the edge of pavement at that location?
Mhm. That's an exhibit I'd like to prepare for everyone. I'd have to get back to you on that, Tom.
Okay.
But when you do look at the site, these contours are fairly consistent east to west. So whatever it is at the grade there, it'll be close. If anything, the grade is higher at the curb than that's the opposite. The grade is lower at the curb. Can I get back to you on that, Tom?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if it looks like the curb or the street contour might be around 627. And then our finished floor is, trying to see it here.
Finished floor there is 636.5.
Okay. Okay, so the, okay, so 620, 636. And so then the top of that column would be at 654 or?
Yep, 654.5. 654.8 is what I'm getting here.
Okay.
7 feet out there.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it right. So if we're at 627 at the curb, the top of the column is 654. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's like 27 feet above the curb. To the top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions?
Yeah, I'll ask. In response to the neighbors' concerns about the height of the wall, and have you done, or have you looked at any kind of a site study in terms of what that wall, how that wall would impact light and shadow across their property line or across their property?
We haven't yet. Ken, do you have that 30 or that 16th site plan that I sent earlier? The 16th inch?
The one that this particular image came from?
Yeah, I probably didn't make it to you yet.
Let me check my email here a moment.
It helps show where these neighbors are.
Okay, bear with me a minute. I'm pulling it up right now.
And their distance from the house.
Okay, this is the one that was the last one that came in.
Yes.
Is that showing up okay?
Yeah, let's pan further down and just we can all see where that neighboring house to the east is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that is a 2-story home too. That's elevated at a higher elevation than our finished floor that we're proposing.
Right.
Yep. We will prepare a lot more exhibits studying the sun and the shadows for Planning Commission and the effect on these neighbors.
Right.
Which we believe to be fairly minimum.
Yeah, so I mean, it's certainly by this, I can kind of see that the concrete wall is pretty far to the east of certainly their pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it shouldn't really impact from a shadow perspective.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? John, anything? No.
No.
I have a couple questions then. Can you talk a little bit, you mentioned about adding some walls between the neighbor to the south and the pickleball court. Can you talk about what's being proposed? What was sent to my package doesn't show any walls at all. So maybe you can tell me how high they are, what the material is, how it impacts the landscape plan that was originally submitted.
That's right. So what you see on the original submittal is an existing wall along the property line to the south. That's, I believe it's like 5 feet high, and it's got a metal portion of open fence on top of that. What we're proposing is we've got an 8-foot public utility easement there where we'd like to be planting olive trees and multiple thick foliage trees there, building another masonry wall that would be 4 foot, 4'6" higher than our pickleball court, and then creating, so that would be a CMU. We're proposing for all of our CMU to be, again, a super slump stone with a thick, a heavy mortar finish on there. So that'd be 4'6" higher than our pickleball court. We're proposing a 3-foot barrier between that masonry wall and where the concrete portion of the pickleball court would begin. Again, getting medium sized plants and foliage in there. And that's also where we would show our southernmost, where we would locate our southernmost pickleball court lights. So we're proposing thick, high foliage, another medium sized masonry wall with medium foliage in between that and our pickleball court to help with this sound absorption and ricochet and really sending that sound back towards the north, towards our property.
And what elevation is the pickleball court?
It's at 619.5, which we determined, if you pan down, Ken, you can see where that 620 is, almost dead east of where we are. Our pickleball court is at 619.5. So we're trying to keep this thing low.
And do you have an idea what elevation the house is next door is?
I'm sure I can find it. We have a survey. I think I would need to consult with them.
Okay.
Yep.
And just out of curiosity, did you look at possibly internalizing the pickleball court to the middle of the site where the bocce ball court is, away from the neighbor?
We located it based on views for our casita and our living spaces, and we knew we wanted this bocce ball court to be the center of activity. So there was no question in our mind that the bocce ball was going to be central. Where bocce and pool, that's how they live their lives and play. Pickleball court, again, they're just social players where they're not, they're not playing that every single minute of every day. So that's why we located it where we show it.
Okay. And then on the finish materials board, item number 10 lists stucco colors, and then it says options, option A, B, C, D. What are these actual colors, or these are possibilities used somewhere?
I'd like to have that rejected from the material board. Can we just rip that off? We have decided not to do any of those colors. The heavy texture stucco that we're proposing is 6A. That's right there, which is a dark dark gray.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
And I think that's everything I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
One additional question.
Yes, member.
About the lighting on the pickleball court, if they're such casual players, why does it need to be lit?
The reason for that is they're going to be playing during like the winter time. They're so close to the mountains that sun goes down really early. We've added to our notes that we do have a timer that you can only play max an hour on that thing. At most, they'll be playing 2 hours max into dusk. But we do have David Marino here. I think he might be able to explain that if you'd like to hear from him.
No, I was just curious if they're such casual players that I was just curious as to why they'd want lights on it. But no, your reasoning makes sense. I understand it.
Dan, I would like to add to that, if you don't mind. We've been playing at Demuth Park, and typically toward the end of the day when it's cooler, around 4 o'clock, and I don't know if you've played pickleball before, but you can't physically play the game for more than an hour and a half or two. But what we find is even at Demuth Park, when the sun gets below the mountains and the shade hits the courts, to be able to really see the ball and just to be safe, everyone is turning the lights on over there, in the dusk time of the day. So, when it's getting dark earlier in the season and we start playing maybe at 4 o'clock when it cools down, we might play till 5:30 or 6, but the lighted court is not intended to be playing really at nighttime. We've never played the game, after dusk. We've never started a game after dusk, nor do we anticipate that we'd be playing into the evening. It's really just for that dusk and kind of early evening time when we start playing in the late afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions of the applicant? If not, we'll close that and we'll open a discussion amongst the committee members.
Thank you.
Member Josie.
I had a question for staff. And the question is, typically with hillside development, is the height of the building measured from the edge of curb or the maximum allowable height? Isn't there a median point that height is taken from?
Member Dosey, the building height is measured on a typical lot as the top of curb or crown of road plus 18 inches. That's where the measurement of building height begins. But on a lot that is of this size, the measurement is taken basically from the adjacent grade. And it can be as determined by the Planning Commission on where the actual height measurement is going to occur. I'll get the exact wording for you here in just a moment as you're continuing with any other questions you may have.
And what would that height limit be, let's say?
If it was a standard lot, you would be looking at a 12-foot maximum height at the setback line that would rise at a rate of 1 to 3 to a maximum of 18.
Okay.
On hillside lots with an administrative minor modification, one can request up to a 30-foot height.
Okay. I guess, okay, so I'm concerned about the height of the, I like the design. I like the interest it has, the whole feel to it. I am concerned about the height of the southernmost pylon or pillar as part of the facade. And then I think the other area of concern I have is on the garage side of the project for for people, yeah, as you're driving down and exiting Rose Avenue, how exposed that garage area may be. I was trying to find a more of a perspective view of that, but it's just appearance as you're heading south on Rose Avenue towards the gate, how that is going to appear, and that there's really no screening of the garage. I know there's some grade changes there, and the garage is lower as you come down. But that's another area of concern I had.
I think Member Dosi, Nick can probably speak to a little bit, but in this illustration that you see on my screen now, this is Rose Avenue, and this is sort of looking as the road goes down in elevation. And you'll see here that they do have a series of plantings and trees here that would provide screening of the motor court area here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Member Walsh.
Again, back to the driveway, because I was kind of intrigued by it. Is it intended to be a one-way control point starting at the north?
We do see them mostly entering from one side, which would be from the north, and exiting from the south.
Okay, and I'm sure you looked at alternatives in terms of just, as Member Dosi was talking about, screening and all, if you did not have it as a two-point entry. It's just, it's kind of a curiosity.
We did. What we are doing though with this, we've got a large island here, and what Ken was sharing earlier was a very aerial shot. We're filling that with Mexican blue palms and different Mediterranean palms, and trying to make this a dense island, not only for interest, but for screening the garage doors.
Mm-hmm. I guess I just would have been tempted to limit it to a one-point in and out and open the space up beyond and do some effective screening. This sort of doubles the problem a little bit, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Member Pauline?
I share Tom's comment about the height of the wall at the the lowest end of the site. It is pretty imposing. Again, I'll use that word again. Apparently, this is AR&D's imposing period. So I think, yeah, I mean, the study I think would be important just to understand it a little bit more. And it also feels in one of the renders, I think it was on page 23 of the package. I'm not sure which one that is. It was south elevation looking north. And again, this is only seen from inside of the site, but it's the way the roof line of that sort of end connects to the large concrete panels feels a bit awkward, where it just kind of feels like it's an applied facade as opposed to something that's a little bit more integrated with the structure. I don't know, Ken, if you could get to that page or not.
I'm trying to see if I can find it as you're talking, so give me just a minute. But keep going, and I'll get this up on the screen as quickly as I can.
That's the most kind of obvious.
Let me try something here a moment. Bear with me just a second.
Okay.
Give me just a second. Now I'm going to get to these back drawings. As I go through this packet, please stop me on the image that you're asking about.
Yeah, keep going.
I think it's on page 24.
Yeah, 23 or 24. You can kind of see it pretty obviously.
Let me get this mouse over here a second.
Okay,
Here's
this is
23.
the first one.
Is that the one?
Yeah. So if you, of course, so you can kind of see where that, where the roof plane kind of intersects with that wall. It just feels like it feels odd to me there. I'm not sure if there's a better way to make that connection, but it just kind of feels bizarre. Now go to the next image, and it even becomes clearer where from that side, it really looks like those are kind of disconnected panels over there.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels a little bit awkward to me, that's all.
If I'm not mistaken, Nick, on this particular area, isn't the roof plane slightly separate from the wall?
It is separated, so that southernmost concrete form is freestanding and it does not connect.
I think I can, here, you can see it here.
Yeah.
So here is that southern part of that home. Here's the wall. And this is actually an open area that's got some landscaping in it. So I think the imagery or the illusion when you're looking at it from in this part of the lot is that the wall is almost separate from the volume of the house.
But it was important for maintaining that that view corridor as you're walking down to the guest rooms without needing to create unnecessary conditioned space within.
Right.
And keep the rhythm of these walls too.
Right. That's my only comment.
Who have I missed? Me? Yeah, so I think for me, the critical issues are the height of the wall at the southern end and the impact. 27 feet above the curb is really a big element. It's a huge element. And I know the neighbors across the street were talking about views. And what's commonly done in Los Angeles and maybe here to a lesser degree is that you stake out where the building is and the heights so that you can actually see what impact that building will have on the residents, the neighbors' view corridors. And I think that's really going to be important for this because quite frankly, at 27 feet above the curb, and I'm assuming they're at a comparable elevation as the street at their pool deck, that's going to block their view. And as I look at it, what opening there is maybe above the carport and the driveway gate. But then you've got a building beyond that. So I'm really concerned about the height of that. And I understand architecturally, I think it's a beautiful idea. It's beautifully executed. I just don't know that it's as neighbor friendly as it ought to be. And the other thing is the noise impact and the light impact on the neighbor to the south of the pickleball court. I have a lot of concern. In their letter, they mentioned that that's where their 3 bedrooms are located along the north side of their house, which would be adjacent to the pickleball courts. Pickleball is a noisy sport. It'll be up to Planning Commission to condition that. It may be that they condition time on it for both the lights and playing, but it's a concern. And I just wonder if there wasn't another place on this huge site that it couldn't go, that it wouldn't have the negative impact on the neighbor. And the third point, which was brought out by other committee members, was the screening of the four-car garage. And I think it can be successfully done with planting, and I hope that it will be. So that's all I have. We need a motion.
I would like to make a motion to continue the project and request some additional cross sections that would include the residents to the north and the south, as well as to the east. And some study of the views as most of the homes in that area are north of this. So people will be coming past this and they'll drive up, but as they drive down, the impact of those garages and motor court, I think, could be addressed. We do like to rely on landscaping, but it changes over time. And I think there might be some, and to also see if that area may ever be gated as well. Even though they're behind a gate, there might be some desire by the owner to gate that auto court as well. So I'm concerned about the view of that as you exit Rose Avenue.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Member Poline. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, very much.
Thank you.
So at this point, it completes our agenda. Is there any new business?
No other items, Mr. Chair, unless the committee has any comments or requests.
I have a question, David. You mentioned in the last meeting that we might have a second meeting to go over some of the requests for changes in the process. If I remember correctly, is that being scheduled?
Yeah, so our next meeting was regularly scheduled for March 15th. But as you'll recall at the last meeting, we're going to move that up to March 8th. And at that meeting, we do have some items of business, and we're going to try and keep those to a minimum so that we can also discuss what Director Fag was mentioning regarding changes to the architectural review process.
Okay. Great. Anybody else? Well, with that, at 9:15, we are officially over. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.